Kram Jnanamukti Rupavindam Srikaram Kripakaram Naradadiram Kivrinda Bandita Parandana Kashakapa. Good evening, guys. Thank you for joining the live stream. Today we have something very interesting in store. I've never done something like this. I've just read a book today and I'm going to basically discuss it today only. But it's not going to be the entire book. We will get into some context later on as more people join. But some interesting comments have already come. So I'll start with the comments पहले. Harry Potter. ये बात. भारतीय सभ्यता नमस्कारम. Oh, that's linguistic. हाँ. Namaskaram linguist. Jai Shri Ram Ninar. Would Rajarshi Nandy qualify as a trad? I would say yes. I hope the audio is coming fine, etc. Hello. Yeah. So, Ninar, why? I'm pretty surprised at your comment because why wouldn't he qualify as a trad? Maybe unless he believes in hard and fast, rigid caste system. Maybe that's why you think he might not qualify as a trad. Because other than that, anyone, for me personally, I think anyone who says that Shastra Sarvapuri and nothing above Shastra, no modification to Shastra basically. If you do want to modify Shastra, prove yourself first, etc. Not how the times changes, etc. Shastra has said this, therefore we will do this. That, according to me, is that person would be a trad for me. So that's why I have mentioned him in this thumbnail. And Karpatri Maharaj, of course, is very much obviously he's the king of trads, obviously. Now, so let me start with the context. Okay, let's see if any important comments has come. Hiran Sarkar. If he's associated with traditional Acharya or Sampradaya, then yes, or otherwise technically no. But Sampradaya, I mean like those of Ramanujacharya, Ramanadis, Shankaracharya, etc. My thoughts have recently been clouded. I guess there is some tantric messing with my mind. Lol. Hi Dada, আজ তোমাকে মেসেজ করেছিলাম এর সাথে. Yes, hi. একটা গান শুনি ছোট করে. Indeed, tantric trad, not Vedika trad. Yeah. Trad is traditionalist. I'm new to Hinduism. Any recommendations? By the way, I like to learn more of the agnostic side. I don't know. What's there to learn in the agnostic side? You just have not decided whether God really exists, quote unquote, or not. But as for starting to learn anything about Hinduism, my starting base was Sri Aurobindo's book, The Life Divine. And I don't know if it would be fair to recommend it to anyone and everyone or not, because the English is mind-bogglingly tough. It's the toughest English book I've ever read in my life, and I studied in an English medium school. So if you have the patience, read it slowly, then that would be a great place to start in. Otherwise, just read Ramayana Mahabharat. No, that's the collection of all our ethos. Nina is saying, okay, thanks. I think your answer makes the best sense. Tantrics do not follow Vedika Varnashrama Pratha. Right, that's why. Okay, so now starting with the context, okay? So, I've said this a few days back already. I'll just repeat some things. This is a book called The Present Age, okay? This is a little small cute looking book. It's a pretty thin book. It's a collection of a 5-book series from the publisher called Harper Perennial, okay? It's a branch of HarperCollins only. So you see those 3 red books are the history of Indian philosophy, okay? Above that you see some thin books. See those, okay? Yeah. So those are the rest of the other 3 books of this series. Now this series is called a resistance library, okay? There's only one book in that series which I won't buy. It's by Eric Fromm because it's just 112 pages, but it costs more than 600 rupees. So I'll read it someday from Internet Archives. And the other 2 I have bought, but I have not read yet. So the one other book that I have read already is the first one I had bought from this series. It's called The True Believer. It's by someone called Eric Hoffer. It's sort of a research into how mass movements take place, okay? And the other book is by Nietzsche. The one by Eric Fromm is called On Disobedience, and this one is by Soren Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher and theologian, and this is called The Present Age. Now the theme of this book series is resisting mass movements, and all of these writers, when they were writing, observing, and another book is in that series. It's called the Milgram Experiment. There's a famous metal band also in Kolkata called the Milgram Experiment. It was a famous experiment on disobedience done at Yale University by someone called Stanley Milgram. Okay, so the theme of this series is disobedience and resisting totalitarian states. So all these authors of these 5 books in this series were basically all the time writing or criticizing or writing against Nazism, Stalinism, Maoism, all those totalitarian regimes. Okay, or they were predicting in this case, of course, because he died in 1855 as far as I remember. So some of them were predicting, some of them were observing, some of them were criticizing these totalitarian regimes. Now, as it happened that later on Hitler got all the blame for totalitarianism. Okay, from so nowadays whenever anywhere any bad government, any bad prime minister or president does anything bad, he's called Hitler और मुसोलिनी. फैशिज्म और नाजिज्म, वही दो चीज़ खराब चीज़ हुआ है मनुष्य के इतिहास में, ऐसा लगता है. ठीक है, और कोई विलन नहीं है, कोई नुआंस नहीं है. कौन सा विलन क्या क्या खराब काम करता है उसका भी कोई नॉलेज नुआंस कुछ भी नहीं है. ओके, नॉट ऑल बैड थिंग्स आर सेम. आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट डिग्री दैट लेस बैड और मोर बैड. आई एम सेइंग देयर आर डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ बैड एट लीस्ट, राइट? Ravan also was a bad person. George Bush was also a bad person. Hitler was also a bad person. But they didn't do exactly the same things. So if you are calling everyone Nazi, everyone fascist, it means that you have no fucking knowledge of history. So on the other hand, there are people like Stalin, Mao, who are worshipped by a whole lot of people in university campuses all over the world, especially India. Stalin is worshipped in Communist Party offices. Stalin's photo hangs in Communist Party offices. Now, in that context, this book I started reading. So I bought a lot of books this Durga Puja, and this I started among the other ones I bought from that series, because this is the thinnest one of that. Okay, this is just 86 pages, all in all 87 pages. So this book is basically of 2 articles. Okay, this is not a single book written by Kierkegaard. It's a collection of 2 articles by him that came out in other books that were compiled here as part of this theme-based book series. Okay, called Resistance Library. So the first article is I'll get into a bit a screenshot from that article I shared today on my community tab and explained in Hindi English mixed. So we will have to set some context for that because we will mainly discuss the second article, for which we will have to discuss the first article also. But in that 87 pages, about 67 pages are basically the first article itself. Okay, which is called The Present Age, which is why the book is called The Present Age. Now this article called The Present Age was written as part of his a different book, which also had 2 separate articles, but that was published by him only. That was called The Revolutionary Age versus the Present Age. Okay, that was not one article. He wrote 2 separate articles. Okay, revolutionary age में ये होता है. People stand up for things. People are passionate about things. Here and there, people are driving out these governments. People are coming up with Protestantism, etc. Different things are happening. Churns are going on in society. Whereas when he's writing the article The Present Age, which is he's going to describe his own era, that is 1846. Okay, that's when this Present Age article was written. He's saying that age, that era is basically only and only about intellectual discussions, reflections, debates, thinking, pondering over, and absolutely no action, no passion. Everyone takes debates and discussions just as a form of entertainment. People are shallow. No one takes anything seriously in their lives. No social issue or political issue is taken seriously. They are just happy. They'll have they'll go to some party, have a cool discussion about politics. के वो like there was a dialogue in Nayak, no? कि darling, politics ने इस देश को खत्म कर दिया है. There'll be that top level superficial level discussions, and they'll go home. And that's what he's criticizing about the quote unquote present age. Now, in context of that, after just 1 year later, he writes another article, which is the main topic of our discussion. That article is called, just a 20-page article, okay? Just 20-page article. And that too, 20 page of this short of a book. And it took me 3 hours to read. And I was not distracted. I was on my terrace. I was reading it all the entire time. But I had to think and think so much. I had to take so many notes. I had to underline so many things that it took me 3 hours to read for 20 pages. I have not underlined so many things since I read India, that is Bharat by Deepak. See, I'm not an academic. I was always pretty much bad at my studies. I was mainly focused on cricket for a while, and then I was focused on music, guitar playing, live shows, band rehearsals, listening to music, different kinds of music all day. So an actual academic may be laughing at me, but I didn't start reading non-fiction until 2021, Sanjeev Sanyal, okay, late 2021. Before that, I had just read all Bengali famous detective stories and Harry Potter, etc. Those things. I started reading non-fiction with Sanjeev Sanyal. So Kierkegaard today made my mind pretty fatigued, tired. It felt like my mind was doing dumbbells. I was in a gym with my brain working out, and especially because for the last 2-3 days I've been reading so much heavy stuff. In the Introduction to Tantra book, which we finished just last night only, that wasn't too heavy intellectually. It was a rough gist, but other than that, I was reading it. At least I was taking in new information. But before that as well, there was the Shakti and Shakta book, which we are also discussing on live streams, okay? And the second chapter of that, oh my god, that was insanely advanced and tough for me to read and grasp, contemplate, discuss on live stream, okay? So after reading this 20 pages, I had to take a 45-minute just relaxation. I had to lie down on my bed. I felt like someone had beaten me up. I was insanely just tired. Now that article is called Of the Difference Between a Genius and an Apostle. Now I was so blown away by the first article, The Present Age, of which I shared screenshots and all, that I had basically declared to myself that based on just this 67-page article, Kierkegaard is already my favorite author. He's the best author I've ever read, because it felt like he was writing a biography of my life. After that, there's another 20-page article. I thought, okay, I'll read it casually. I'll finish it easily. My brain is already so much warmed up from reading that, The Present Age. And the heading, the name of this article didn't make any sense. So I thought it must be some casual thing he has written. So I have no idea what he means by this, by this name of this article, Of the Difference Between a Genius and an Apostle. And then I start reading it, and then everything changes in my reading experience. First and foremost, I realized that whatever he wrote in that article are all the arguments given by the so-called trads of Hinduism, or the sections of Hindutva as well, a lot of whom even hate BJP ardently, a lot of whom even hate Deepak ardently. Because when I first started reading this article, the first thing that came to my mind was one guy who has probably unfollowed me on YouTube and Instagram as well by now. His Instagram profile was filled with Swami Karpatri Maharaj's clips, photos, quotations, etc. So he and I had gotten into a debate because he was saying that he really dislikes Deepak. He was being very critical of Deepak. I think he has spoken to Deepak himself, but he's very much opposed to Deepak, because Deepak is bringing in ideas like decoloniality, etc. And that, according to him, is a waste of time. He's saying all this is useless Western jargon. S.N. Balagangadhara has also said, what's the point of using words like decoloniality, etc. Even though S.N. Balagangadhara himself uses an invented term called Indic consciousness. So why not call it decoloniality in action? So he has said something to me in my comment section which absolutely blew my mind, and at that moment I was like, what the fuck are you saying? And later on I've had some more nuanced views of his idea. It has been in my head since then. And now there's another idea that I've kept on simmering mode in my head, which I'm pondering over for the last few weeks, which is that there's enough justification for even atheists to follow Hindu rituals. First and foremost, because there are atheist explanations of all, and atheist justifications for all, and reasons for all Hindu practices, most of them anyway. But other than that, even basic sadhana, worship, etc., those things, upasana, those things should be done by atheists as well, according to me. In light of all that, now let's start this article, and you'll see why I'm so excited about this. And please feel free to interrupt and tell me if you didn't understand any particular sentence or something. I've taken countless notes, and I'll be hopefully be fully able to explain the article to you. Now, my request to you guys is that especially the trads here, you all will have to tell me that how much you all agree with this, and my guess is you all will agree with this 100%. And the people who are not trads in my viewer base, my question to you guys will be, are you guys absolutely paranoid and absolutely fearful of such ideas, or you would be accommodating and maybe accepting of such ideas to some extent? Okay, let's start this. This is going to be pretty fascinating. And who Soren Kierkegaard is, we will get into that later on, because let not his life experiences or his personal views affect your or color your listening experience of this article. Okay, after the article we will get into who he is. There's a basic one paragraph given here, but there are twists and turns in the article as well. There are different aspects approached, but all that is near the end. But even who he is and some of his other works might come off as a surprise. But first and foremost, he's writing everything from a Christian perspective. Let me just give that spoiler. Other than that, let me now check one or two comments and then we will start this. You look so excited and happy. Absolutely. I think Kiran misunderstood whatever context Swami was talking of atheism, but it is clear one who is atheist cannot be Advaita Vedantist, because Vedanta is theist, believing Brahman is theism. It's lagging. Okay, someone else also tell me, is it lagging, guys? Because in the monitor I'm seeing my own live feed there, it's not lagging. Any important comments addressed to me? There is no real Hindu-Jew collaboration going on anyway, so I think it doesn't matter actually. Advaita is highly theistic, more than Vaishnavas and others. Only foolish call Advaita as atheistic. How is Advaita atheistic, guys? Swami Sarvapriyananda has never said such things. You must misunderstood. I see. Okay. Where's my pen? Okay, let me have a sip of coffee. So, what exactly have the errors of exegesis and philosophy done in order to confuse Christianity? And how have they confused Christianity? Okay, let me just see if I can give any context from the previous chapter. Okay, basically the previous chapter I have discussed already. The point is that the present age is passionless, okay? There's so much pondering over, so much reflection. Basically in Bengali what we call atlamo, that no one is taking any real action, and whoever is taking a real action, they are being criticized, etc. Okay, that's written in 1846. Now he writes this article in 1847. So he starts off saying, what exactly have the errors of exegesis and philosophy done in order to confuse Christianity, and how have they confused Christianity? Now a footnote says that, footnote by the translator, that errors moreover are not confined to heterodoxy. Okay, the errors he's talking about, it's not just about heterodoxy, but are also found in hyper orthodoxy. They are in fact those of thoughtlessness. He calls that thoughtless orthodoxy. So he is criticizing, he's starting off the article criticizing the field called philosophy itself. He's saying we will discuss basically how has philosophy confused Christianity, and what are the things that philosophy has done to confuse Christianity. Quite briefly and categorically, they have simply forced back the sphere of paradox religion into the sphere of aesthetics, and in consequence have succeeded in bringing Christian terminology to such a pass that terms which, so long as they remain within their sphere, are qualitative categories now, and can be put to almost any use as clever expressions. Okay, you already see that this is very much what's going on with Hinduism to a certain extent, and especially with Durga Puja in Bengal, right? Doesn't it seem familiar? That I am a practicing Hindu and I love eating meat. Navratri, I will eat meat because I'm Bengali, etc. Or I am a practicing Hindu, quote unquote, because I took one reel on Ashtami, and I'm against CA. Everyone is all of a sudden a practicing Hindu. 2 दिन पहले तक सब भोसड़ी के atheist थे, अब सब के सब practicing Hindu बन गए हैं, just because they need to counter Hindutva now. And it's in a way good that everyone feels the need to show off their Hindu identity now. But he is calling religion always in this article paradox religion. Okay, now just for clarity, let's just Google what exactly does paradox mean. Now paradox has two meanings. So paradox is a seemingly absurd or contradictory statement or proposition which when investigated may prove to be well-founded or true. So let's say RSS is against casteism. RSS is an anti-caste organization. Okay, if you whisper this in the ears of a commie, they will probably faint. But after investigation, they will probably realize that yeah, this is in fact true. So that might be called a paradox. Other than that, there's only one meaning given here. Okay, a statement or proposition which, despite sound or apparently sound reasoning from acceptable premises, leads to a conclusion that seems logically unacceptable or self-contradictory. Okay, so both these explanations of paradox are contradictory in itself only. The two meanings of paradox are in fact a paradox. But anyway, when he says paradox religion, he basically means that religion has some unexplainable things or contradictory things which are just agreed upon by people. So he is calling that paradox religion. So quite briefly and categorically, philosophy, they meaning philosophy, have simply forced back the sphere of paradox religion into the sphere of aesthetics. Okay, Durga Puja is just a carnival now, and in consequence have succeeded in bringing Christian terminology to such a pass that terms which, so long as they remain within their sphere, are now qualitative categories and can be put to almost any use as clever expressions. Okay, terms of Hinduism are being used willy-nilly, randomly here and there without any real meaning attached to them, or the intended meaning, actually what was supposed to be the meaning of that word, that's also not being used. If the sphere of paradox religion is abolished or explained away in aesthetics, okay, and then good night Christianity. Esprit and the spirit, revelation and originality, a call from God and genius, all end by meaning more or less the same thing now. Okay, he's criticizing this, that they're not supposed to mean the same thing. Are? But now people are interchangeably using the words esprit and spirit, revelation and originality. Okay, revelation is supposed to be from God, originality is supposed to be from your mind. It doesn't have to be necessarily from God. At least that's the trad argument here. A call from God is not the same as genius. That's what Kierkegaard is arguing here. All end by meaning more or less the same thing. That is how the errors of science and learning have confused Christianity. The confusion has spread from learning to the religious discourse, with the result that one not infrequently hears priests, bona fide priests, in all learned simplicity, prostituting Christianity. Okay, he's saying that the confusion has spread to such an extent that even priests, Christian priests, learned Christian priests, are basically prostituting Christianity by using those premises, accepting those premises to defend Christianity. They talk in exalted terms, okay, respected terms of St. Paul's brilliance and profundity, of his beautiful smiles and so on. Okay, but that is mere aestheticism. If St. Paul is to be regarded as a genius, then things look black for him. This is where the article's essence begins. Okay, this is where you'll have to start wondering that why is this a problem? Especially if you come from an atheist background or a liberal background, you'll wonder why is a devout or someone who is actually defending Christianity, who is talking about saving Christianity, why is that person opposing the fact that St. Paul is being called a genius or having a beautiful smile, etc.? What's his problem with these things? That is where the article starts getting interesting. And only clerical ignorance would ever dream of praising him in terms of aesthetics, because it has no standard, but argues that all is well so long as one says something good about him. Okay, St. Paul के बारे में कुछ अच्छा बोल दिया तब हो गया. But that is absolutely wrong according to Kierkegaard. Okay, just hold on, my book is getting too many scratches. I have to keep a towel on top of my table. So, interestingly, he has come to the conclusion, and he has actually pointed out, and this actually opened my mind to a lot of things, that aesthetics, the aesthetics should not be the basis for appreciating someone like Saint Paul or any religious occurrence. Okay, aesthetics is a secular thing basically. Whether Rig Veda is beautiful or not is not the point. Okay, this is where our trads come in. So if Saint Paul is to be regarded as a genius, then things look black for him. He's saying he does not even have to be regarded as a genius, because remember, the name of the article is of the difference between a genius and an apostle. Apostle meaning one who does prachar of Christian faith. What's his problem with aesthetics? Because it has no standard, but argues that all is well so long as one says something good about him. This kind of good-natured and also well-intentioned thoughtlessness, okay? Good-natured and well-intentioned but thoughtlessness is due to the fact that the individual in question is not disciplined by qualitative dialectic, okay? This is like appreciating J. Sai Deepak for his good English accent, good vocabulary, talking speed, etc. A lot of people do that. He's criticizing those people, such people who would appreciate J. Sai Deepak for his English vocabulary. He's calling them, they are not disciplined by qualitative dialectic, okay? You don't have enough articulation to exactly describe what qualities does J. Sai Deepak have. And why is that a problem? Why shouldn't you appreciate J. Sai Deepak for his English grammar and vocabulary? If that person did have qualitative dialectic, he would have learned that to say something good of an apostle when it is inappropriate does him no service, because as a result, he, meaning Saint Paul in this case, is being acclaimed for what in this case is a matter of indifference and admired as something which essentially he is not. Okay, J. Sai Deepak is not an English literature graduate. He's not looking for a career in public speaking or poetry or elocution. Okay, so why are we appreciating his public speaking skills or his English vocabulary? So which essentially he is not, and then what he is forgotten. That is Kierkegaard's main problem in this case, that don't appreciate the wrong thing about the person. Just because you are saying something good about the person, that doesn't make it all right. This kind of thoughtless eloquence is quite as likely to celebrate Saint Paul as a stylist, an artist in words, or better still, since it is after all well known that he was also engaged in a craft as a tent maker, whose masterly work surpassed that of all upholsterers before and since. Upholsterer meaning people who make sofas, tents, etc. And since, for as long as one says something good about Saint Paul, all is well. He's being sarcastic here. As a genius, Saint Paul cannot be compared with either Plato or Shakespeare. As a coiner of beautiful smiles, he comes pretty low down in the scale. As a stylist, his name is quite obscure, because who gives a fuck about whether he had a great smile or not, or why should someone give a fuck or not? And as an upholsterer, meaning a maker of tents, well, I frankly admit I have no idea how to place him in a ranking. The point is that it is always better to treat stupid solemnity as a joke, okay? This stupidity should be treated as a joke, and then we should move on, and then the real serious thing becomes apparent. The fact that Saint Paul is an apostle. As an apostle, Saint Paul has no connection whatsoever with Plato or Shakespeare. Don't bring Saint Paul in the same plane or in the same comparison as Plato or Shakespeare. That's what Kierkegaard is arguing here. So, as an apostle, Saint Paul has no connection whatsoever with Plato or Shakespeare, with stylists or upholsterers, and none of them can possibly compare with them. Plato no more than Shakespeare or Harrison, the upholsterer. A genius and an apostle are qualitatively different. They are definitions which each belong in their own spheres, okay? Genius का definition उसके sphere में अलग है, apostle का definition उस एक अलग sphere में है. Genius का definition कौन से sphere में है? That is the sphere of immanence, okay? IMMANENCE. Just to clarify, again, let's check out the exact meaning of immanence. Okay, immanence basically means the temporal world versus the ecclesiastical world. Temporal meaning the real world we live in, the real human lives, and the realistic literal world. Immanence is the state of being present as a natural and permanent part of something. The immanence of religion is reflected in the music, which is based on Buddhist chants. Okay, so the Rig Veda is not the immanence of religion. Maybe the devotional music that comes out of religion, that will be the immanence part. Okay, so you see, immanence is the more real things, quote unquote, or the secular, or the more things that have an appeal to even atheists. Those are the immanence things. Okay, so the context of genius is in the sphere of immanence, whereas the context of the definition of apostle is in the sphere of transcendence. Now, he starts 3 arguments. This is the first argument, why they are different. Genius may therefore, because his main argument is that genius and apostle are not the same. Okay, just because he's a genius, don't start saying that God sent him or God put some ideas in his head. He wants to have a strict demarcation between these two concepts. Genius may therefore have something new to bring forth. A genius may have something new to offer, but what it brings forth disappears again as it becomes assimilated by the human race. Assimilated by the human race in this case means that the entire human race accepts it, replicates it, and many other people also start doing that. Okay, so let's say a genius like Hans Zimmer makes a background score like Lion King, Man of Steel, etc. But slowly, within 5 years, everyone starts copying that and following that style. Okay, so ho gaya, uska genius is now done. Whatever he came up with, that creation is now commonplace. What it brings forth, the genius, disappears again as it becomes assimilated by the human race, just as the difference, quote unquote, genius disappears as soon as one thinks of eternity. Okay, when does the concept of genius itself seem to be relevant? When we think of eternity. Okay, when we are thinking of Ananta, we are thinking of an eternal life, millions of years, thousands of years from today, then Hans Zimmer's genius does not matter. The apostle has, paradoxically, something new to bring as well. The newness of which, precisely because it is essentially paradoxical, that is religion, and not an anticipation in relation to the development of the race. Okay, whatever the apostle has to, the new thing that the apostle has to offer is not like creating a different kind of a music genre. Whatever he is bringing is going to be in the sphere of that paradox religion sphere, right? In that realm, in that context. But it is still new. But even though it is new, how is it different from the newness of what the genius is doing? Because the newness of the thing that apostle is bringing is not in anticipation in relation to the development of the race, and always remains, just as an apostle remains an apostle in all eternity, and no eternal immanence puts him on the same level as other men, because he is essentially paradoxically different. So whatever he is offering, that thing does not have any immanence. Okay, it has no eternal, just as apostle remains an apostle in all eternity, in the same way his ideas, no eternal immanence puts him on the same level as other men. In the same way, whatever he is going to preach always remains. The religion of Christianity always remains, or the idea that there is a God and you must worship him, that always remains. So he might bring something new in the sense that he will approach new people, talk to new people, or maybe interpret it in a different way. Okay, but the core concept is absolutely the same thing. Whereas Hans Zimmer, when he's making a new different genre, that might be something that has never been done before, and a genre which maybe will go out of fashion in 10-20 years. That's the difference between what the apostle is bringing and what Hans Zimmer is bringing, a genius is bringing. Now, number 2, genius is what it is of itself. That is, through that which it is in itself. Okay, a genius is in itself. We will get into more details about this later on as well, no problem. An apostle is, on the other hand, what he is by his divine authority. Here now the trad arguments start coming in. Divine authority is something the genius does not have, whereas the apostle has. Genius, now the point 3, that which is the third of his 3 arguments. Genius has only an immanent teleology. The apostle is placed as absolute paradoxical teleology. Teleology means something that is defined by the purpose it serves, not by how it is caused, okay? Which is very much looked upon by liberals and atheists and communists. Genius has only an immanent teleology because, again, the purpose that it serves is immanent. Let's say the music of Hans Zimmer. And whereas the apostle is placed as absolute paradoxical teleology because the thing he is preaching is absolute and paradoxical. All thought breeds in immanence, okay? He's criticizing thought to a certain extent here. But we have to remember still the context, that why is this article then being presented in a book which is part of a concept called resistance library, which is about disobeying authoritarian regimes, okay? Remember, keep that in mind while listening to this. Otherwise, it's just another religious manifesto. All thought breeds in immanence, okay? Thought is always in the realm of immanence, whereas faith and the paradox are a qualitative sphere unto themselves. Faith and paradox are a qualitative sphere unto themselves, whereas thought is in the realm of immanence. As between man and man, as man, all differences are immanent, okay? All differences between mankind, between two people, five people, all that is in the immanent realm, in the immediate, in the world we live in the lives we have right now. But those differences are vanishing. They vanish before essential and eternal thought. Again, because when the Ananta comes into question, those differences don't matter. A factor which is certainly valid for the moment, okay, but disappears. That difference may be valid for the moment, that you are a prime minister, I'm a random YouTuber, but disappears. That difference disappears in the essential equality of eternity. When it comes to eternity, there is a general equality always, because in the end, millions from years from now, it does not matter who was the prime minister and who was a YouTuber. Genius is, as the word itself shows, immediateness. It's about right here, right now, because it comes from ingenium, that which is inborn, primitive, primus, original, origio, etc. It is a natural qualification, which is genius is born. Even long before there can be any question as to how far genius is prepared to relate its particular gifts to God, it is genius, and it remains genius even if it does not do so, okay? Now, he's talking about sometimes what happens is that a genius may himself thank God for the genius he has. Hans Zimmer may say that I have not done anything, it's all the credit of God that I have become such a great composer. But it actually does not matter if he does say so or not, because that is not the case. We are not talking about his genius coming from God. Whatever his genius, it's with him. We are not bothered about whether it has come from God or not, in this context at least. So, even long before there can be any question as to how far genius is prepared, is the genius even prepared to credit God for this? How far genius is prepared to relate its particular gifts to God? It is genius even then, because even if he does not credit it to God, people will think he is a genius. And it remains genius even if it does not do so, even if he does not credit God for his genius. It is possible that genius may so change that it develops into what it is, okay? It is possible that genius may change, that it develops into what it is, so as to acquire conscious possession of itself. Acquire conscious possession of itself. If one uses the expression quote unquote paradox in order to denote the something new which a genius may have to bring forth, the new genre of music maybe, it is only used in an inessential sense, not an essential sense. It is only used in an inessential sense of the transitory paradox of anticipation. Transitory paradox, so it's again temporary. Transitory paradox of the anticipation, thus condensed into a paradox which however disappears again later, because it's genius, it's about this lifetime, few years later it will get assimilated by the society, as was mentioned in the previous page. However, disappears again later. In his first communication, a genius may be paradoxical, but the more he comes to himself, the more completely will the paradox disappear. When the genius first appears with his work, when you first hear the music of Hans Zimmer, you may think that, wow, this is also a complete paradox. It's almost like a godly thing we have heard. But the more you keep listening to his music, more you will think that, yeah, it's commonplace. Because like every big artist, when they are in the scene for 15-20 years, people start to get bored with their music unless they keep reinventing themselves. Like Linkin Park used to get heavily criticized. Like today, even the Bengali band Fossils, they get heavily criticized for coming up with music which is hated by the people who were their initial fans. Okay, initial Fossils fans from 2001, 2, 3. Okay, or Linkin Park fans from 2002, 3. They hated the stuff that came out after 2011, 12, 13. Okay, because in his first communication, a genius may be paradoxical, but the more he comes to himself, the more completely will the paradox disappear. A genius may be a century ahead of his time and therefore appear to be a paradox. Sometimes a genius may appear paradox just because he's very advanced with his ideas and therefore appear to be a paradox, but immediately the race will assimilate. The race will pick it up. Everyone else will follow his work. They will do similar things that they learned from this genius. They will assimilate what was once a paradox in such a way that it is no longer paradoxical. But that is not the case with religion. Whatever a religion teaches, whatever the apostle teaches. It is otherwise with an apostle. So this is not the case with an apostle. This is 180 degrees opposite with the apostle. The word itself indicates the difference. An apostle is not born. A genius is born, at least according to Kierkegaard. An apostle is not born. An apostle is a man called and appointed by God. Now compare this with our dharma gurus, spiritual gurus, religious gurus, Shankaracharya, etc. Okay, an apostle is not born. An apostle is a man called and appointed by God. Or even think of Rajarshi Nandy in this context, receiving a mission from him. This is exactly what Rajarshi Nandy said only yesterday in Beer Biceps podcast, that why is all of a sudden he getting so much popularity. He's saying that someone somewhere, some entity wants him to do this prachar. So an apostle is a random man who gets called and appointed by God, receiving a mission from him. An apostle does not develop in such a way that he successively becomes what he is. Okay, it's not like he did a course on something and he pursued something and then decided to become an apostle. Because to become an apostle is not preceded by any potential possibility. Essentially, every man is equally near to becoming one. Anyone might have the capability. Anyone might do those same rigorous rituals and educations and might become an apostle, but everyone does not become an apostle. An apostle can never come to himself in such a way that he becomes conscious of his apostolic calling as a factor in the development of his life. Apostolic calling is a paradoxical factor, which from first to last in his life stands paradoxically outside his personal identity with himself, as the definite person he is. A man may perhaps have reached years of discretion long ago, when suddenly he is called to be an apostle. You see how many stories there are even in the Hindu concept, in the Hindu context, that they were living their lives, all of a sudden they feel a calling and they do other things in the realm of religion. As a result of this call, he does not become more intelligent, does not receive more imagination. Okay, we are not talking about him becoming a better person or something, or he doesn't get a greater acuteness of mind and so on and so forth. On the contrary, he remains himself exactly how he was. Okay, and by that paradoxical fact, he is sent on a particular mission by God. By this paradoxical fact, the apostle is made paradoxically different from all other men for all eternity. We will get into elaborate it more later on. So the new which he may have to bring forth, the whatever new thing he is offering, the new which he may have to bring forth is the essential paradox. And according to Kierkegaard's definition of religion, religion is an essential paradox. However long it may be proclaimed in the world, it remains essentially and equally new. He's talking about religion here. Equally paradoxical, and no immanence can assimilate it. The apostle did not behave like the man marked out by natural gifts, who is born before his time. For example, a genius who is born before his time, the apostle is not like that. He does not behave like that. He was perhaps what we call a simple man, an apostle. But by a paradoxical fact, he was called to proclaim this new thing. Even if thought, okay, thinking, even if thought were to think that it could assimilate the doctrine which an apostle preaches, it cannot assimilate the way in which the doctrine came into the world. Okay, how did religion come into place in the first place? How did the idea of a god, worshipping god, doing particular rituals, etc., having these particular texts for the god, how did these come into place? Though they did not come into existence the same way as a genius brings maybe an art form or an invention or technological invention into the world. Okay, that's Kierkegaard's argument here. The apostle did not behave like the man marked out by natural gifts who is born before his time. He was perhaps what we call a simple man, but by a paradoxical fact, he was called to proclaim this new thing. Even if thought were to think, if thought thought that it could assimilate the doctrine, it cannot assimilate the way in which the doctrine came into the world. Because the essential paradox, that is religion, is the protest against immanence. This is a very important and possibly a beautiful sentence. According to Kierkegaard, religion is a protest against immanence. Immanence meaning the immediate life, your surrounding life. But the way in which a doctrine of this kind, that is of a religious kind, came into this world is qualitatively decisive, and it can only be ignored by deceit or by thoughtlessness. This I agree with very much. He's talking about atheists, of course. He's saying that religion, or the fact that it has qualitatively, the fact that religion is qualitatively decisive, that iska ye quality hai, and that's a given. It can be only ignored by deceit or thoughtlessness. Now his second argument. This is the biggest argument and the longest argument in this article, but it's just a 20-page article. Genius is appreciated purely aesthetically, according to the measure of its content and its specific weight, whereas an apostle is what he is through having divine authority. This is what I was saying for the last 1 or 2 months, that if we have some problem with some practice of Hinduism, do we just randomly stand up and say that, yeah, I am breaking a stereotype and from now on I am a Hindu, I'm a quote unquote practicing Hindu, I'm a Shakta or whatever, but I won't do anything a Hindu does. I will do everything the opposite of what a Hindu does. I will do everything opposite of what a Shakta is supposed to do. But I will call myself a Hindu, I will call myself a Shakta, but randomly conjure up my own rules as I go forth. And should that be allowed? And therefore, in the question of caste or birth-based casteism, can someone really call themselves Hindu and reject birth-based casteism completely? And if so, based on what scripture, or based on which religious leader saying it? Okay, and not religious leader in the sense that modern random ashrams coming up from the age-old sampradayas. I'm saying, shouldn't we take only their words seriously? That is exactly what Kierkegaard is saying here, because they have divine authority. Genius is appreciated purely aesthetically, according to the measure of its content and its specific weight. An apostle is what he is through having divine authority. Divine authority is qualitatively the decisive factor. That is the most important thing according to এত সব কিছু আমার শুধু ওয়ার্ড সারার লাগছে. Divine authority is qualitatively the decisive factor. Divine authority hai to hai. End of argument there. That is what basically Rajarshi Nandy says, that Shastra mein hai to hai. There's no debate after that. If you don't want to follow Shastra, don't become a Tantrik, don't become a Tantra Sadhaka, don't even call yourself Hindu. Who's stopping you? We are not going to forcefully convert you. but don't call yourself all of those things and then come up with your own rules. Divine authority is qualitatively the decisive factor. It is not by evaluating the content of the doctrine aesthetically, okay, or intellectually, that I should or could reach the result. Therefore, the man who proclaimed the doctrine was called by a revelation. Therefore, he is an apostle. Revelation हुआ है तो हुआ है, वो apostle है तो है, and therefore उसका बात divine है and है. The very reverse is the case. The man who is the opposite is also true. The man who is called by a revelation and to whom a doctrine is entrusted कि तुम ये जाके प्रचार करो, argues from the fact that it is a revelation from his authority. It is not analyzed based on its aesthetics or how intellectually juicy it is. I have not got to listen to Saint Paul because he is clever. This is Kierkegaard saying. Or even brilliantly clever. I'm not bothered about that. I am to bow before Saint Paul because he has divine authority. And in any case, it remains Saint Paul's responsibility to see what he produces, to see that he produces that impression that he has that divine authority. Whether anybody bows before his authority or not, that is not the question. Saint Paul is someone that deserves a bow. That's the end of it. And that is the usual Hindu trad argument as well. Okay, शास्त्र में है तो है, उसका जनेऊ है तो है, and that is the end goal. Otherwise, what are we even trying to conserve here? Saint Paul must not appeal to his cleverness, because in that case he is a fool. He must not enter into a purely aesthetic or philosophical discussion of the content of the doctrine, because in that case he gets sidetracked. I have marked this as this is kind of a weak argument, possibly a weak argument in the context of Hinduism, because in Hinduism there is always aesthetic or even philosophical discussions. But I have also marked that it might be true, it might not be a weak argument in the context of Hinduism, it might be applicable in Hinduism as well, because even when there are philosophical discussions or debates between religious leaders, or there used to be, that was also in the realm of some prior agreed upon concepts which were in the realm of religion very much. For example, someone can say that I am Brahmin in today's sense because I am a PhD, but Brahmin is most essentially supposed to have Brahma Gyan. If you did a PhD in Marxist theory, how did you get Brahma Gyan? Or when I first started reading the Rig Veda, I was very excited that from the very first Shukta, it's all about Vidya Jnana. So I thought, wow, there's so much of knowledge gathering and education encouraged in Rig Veda. But then I realized that no, it's Vidya and Jnana of very specific things which are in the religious realm. So let's not conflate everything or secularize everything in the religion. If you want to accept it for what it is, fair enough. Don't modify and distort it. Therefore, the claim that Kierkegaard is making here might be applicable even for Hinduism, that Saint Paul must not enter into a purely aesthetic or philosophical discussion of the content of the doctrine, because in that case he is getting sidetracked. No, he must appeal to his divine authority, and while willing to lay down his life and everything, by that very means he must prevent any aesthetic impertinence. Okay, any discussion based on aesthetics, Saint Paul should prevent, and any direct philosophic approach to the form and content of the doctrine also should be prevented by Saint Paul. Saint Paul does not have to recommend himself and his doctrine with the help of beautiful smiles. On the contrary, he should say to the individual that whether the comparison is beautiful or whether it is worn or threadbare is all one. You must realize that what I say I was entrusted to me by a revelation, so that it is God himself or the Lord Jesus Christ who speaks, and you must not presumptuously set about criticizing the form. I cannot and dare not compel you to obey. Now this is where I have a problem with, because in Christianity, if there is always a call for conversion and also hating on or killing disbelievers, etc., then Saint Paul cannot really say that I cannot dare not compel you to obey. Okay, they actually want to compel you to obey. This might be Kierkegaard being apologetic here. Or this might be Kierkegaard's criticism of those quote-unquote thoughtless orthodoxies. That he is saying, Saint Paul can easily say that I cannot and dare not compel you to obey. If you have to follow, follow. If you don't want to follow, don't follow. Which is usually the Hindu standpoint. But Kierkegaard is assigning it to the Christian standpoint and to Saint Paul also. But historically, that is not true. So he is saying that Saint Paul should have said whether the comparison is beautiful or not does not matter. It has come to me from God. It has come to me from Jesus Christ. End of story. But I cannot and dare not compel you to obey. But through your relation to God, whether you believe it or not, you have a relation to God, at least according to me. Through your relation to God in your conscience, I make you eternally responsible to God, eternally responsible for your relation to this doctrine, by having proclaimed it as revealed to me, and consequently proclaimed it with divine authority, because I have divine authority. Well, they compelled to obey since the beginning. Yeah. Authority is the decisive quality. Okay. Now we get into some juicy discussions about what is authority. Authority here is the decisive quality. Apostle has the decisive authority. Shankaracharya has the decisive authority, or the divine authority as well. Or is there perhaps no difference even within the relativity of human existence, and even though it disappears in immanence, between the king's command and the word of a poet or a thinker? So he's being sarcastic again, Kierkegaard. He's saying that immanence mein to authority disappear hoga hi, but even then, would you say that there's no difference between a king's command and the claims or the demands of a poet or a thinker? But there is, isn't it? Because they have different levels of authority. And what is that difference? If not that the king's command has authority and prohibits all aesthetic and critical impertinence as to the form and the content. King's command is beyond questioning. If you have a problem with it, that's a different problem. You cannot say that I am happy under this king, and also say that that command is subject to questioning all the time. Critical impertinence as to the form and content, but neither the poet nor the thinker has authority. Even within his own sphere of relativity, their statements are judged, the poets and thinkers, their statements are judged on purely aesthetic and philosophic grounds, according to the value of the form and the content. This is sort of, now notice how this actually goes on, that's king's command or divine authority of an apostle or Shankaracharya. That kind of has a modern application as well, which is your academic credentials. That would be the difference between, let's say, me and someone with an actual political science, sociology or history master's degree or PhD, isn't it? Whatever I say will at the end of the day be taken with a grain of salt, or will be looked upon with suspicion. That what are your qualifications, what are your credentials, things that J.S.I. Deepak and Sanjeev Sanyal hear all day long. So the cause of the fundamental confusion in Christianity is surely that as a result of skepticism, people are uncertain whether there is a God, and furthermore that rebelling against all authorities, they forget the meaning and dialectic of authority. A king is present physically, and one can physically assure oneself of the fact, and should it become necessary, he can give one decided physical proof that he is there, because a king has army. But God is not present in that sense. Skepticism has used this fact in order to put God on the same level as all those who have no authority, on the same level as genius, poets and thinkers, whose sayings are judged from a purely aesthetic or philosophic point of view. They are being compared with God. And then, if the thing is well said, the man is a genius. Okay? If someone says something cool, it's called the man is a genius. And if it is very, very well said, if it is unusually well said, then it is said that it's as if God said it through him. Okay, but that is something that Kierkegaard is disagreeing with here. Yeah, Bharatiya Sabhyata is saying, I mean, we look at skepticism at Audrey, Romila, and who not they. Oh, okay. There's that emoji in front of that comment, so I can't read it. In that way, God is spirited away with this skepticism. What is he to do? If God stops a man on the road and calls him with a revelation and sends him armed with divine authority, in the Hindu sense, maybe with a Janu, if God sends him armed with divine authority among men, they say to him, "From whom dost thou come? Who gave you this divine authority?" He answers, "From God." But now God cannot help his messenger physically like a king who gives him soldiers or policemen, or his ring or his signature, which is known to all. In short, God cannot help men by providing them with physical certainty that an apostle is an apostle, which would moreover be nonsense. An apostles being an apostle should not have to be proved with any physical sign. Even miracles, if the apostle has that gift, gives no physical certainty, because the miracle is the object of faith. And as Dostoevsky says, that people aren't really interested in God. People are interested in miracles, mystery, and authority. So, but in that case, they actually oftentimes, and for example, in the era that at least Kierkegaard was writing, people were rejecting divine authority, but were accepting other kinds of authority. Like Vivek Ramaswamy says, when you don't believe in God, you believe in everything, in anything and everything. So, all that is coming together here. Even miracles, if the apostle does have that gift, give no physical certainty, because miracle is the object of faith. Moreover, it is nonsense to require physical certainty that an apostle is an apostle. The paradoxical qualification of a spiritual relationship. Just as it is nonsense to require a physical certainty that God exists, because God is spirit. The apostle then says that he comes from God. The others answer, the skeptics answer, "Very well, then let us see whether the content of your teaching is divine. In which case, we will accept it." But Kierkegaard is rejecting this very premise itself, that people cannot say that, let me first taste your content, okay? Let me check if what you are saying is juicy or not, and let us judge whether it's divine or not. But people don't have the authority or the training to judge whether the apostle is actually divine or not. Very well then, the others answer, "Very well then, let us see whether the content of your teaching is divine, in which case we will accept it, along with the fact that it was revealed to you." In that way, both God and the apostle are fooled. This is Kierkegaard saying. The divine authority of the one called should in fact be the sheer protection. Okay, the divine authority itself should be the sheer protection which safeguards the teaching and preserves it at the majestic distance of the divine from impertinent curiosity, instead of which the doctrine has to submit to being criticized and sniffed at, in order that people may discover whether it was a revelation or not. And probably in the meanwhile, God and the apostle have to wait at the gate or in the porter's lodge till the so-called learned upstairs, the skeptics, have settled the matter. The unlearned people are going to discuss amongst themselves whether this guy actually knows anything or not, the apostle. The man who is called ought, according to the divine ordinance, to use his divine authority in order to be rid of all the impertinent people who will not obey but want to reason, and instead of that men have at a single go transformed the apostle into an examinee who appears on the market with a new teaching, as if, okay, he's just another good idea, he's sort of a motivational speaker, let's see what cool things he's saying. Kierkegaard is saying that should not be the treatment of an apostle. What then is authority? What is authority? Is it the profundity, that how profound things he said, the excellence or the cleverness of the doctrine? Not at all. If authority simply expressed is a higher potency, if authority means something extra important or reduplicated, the fact that doctrine is profound, then there is no such thing as authority. Okay? If authority is simply expressed as is just something a little extra important, it can be duplicated, and it is profound, then there is no such thing as authority. Because in that case, if the learner were to assimilate the doctrine completely, okay, and entirely through the understanding, then there would cease to be any difference between the teacher and the learner. Authority is, on the contrary, something which remains unchanged, which one cannot acquire even by understanding the doctrine perfectly. This is a pretty interesting fact and possibly not applicable to Hinduism. Authority is, on the contrary, something which remains unchanged, which one cannot acquire even by understanding the doctrine perfectly. Authority is a specific quality which, coming from elsewhere, becomes qualitatively apparent when the content of the message or of the action is posited as indifferent. Authority has to be indifferent. Let us take an example as simple as possible, where the situation is nevertheless made clear. When a man with authority says to a man, go, and when a man who has no authority says, go, the expression go and its content are identical. Aesthetically it is, if you like, equally well said. But the authority makes the difference. If authority is not the other, quote unquote the other, okay, a footnote is given here. Perhaps it will occur to some readers, as it occurs to me, to recall in connection with this examination of quote unquote authority or the edifying discourses of Magister Kierkegaard, where he stresses the fact so clearly by repeating word for word on each occasion that they are not sermons because the author is without authority to preach. Okay, this is the triad argument again. They are not sermons because the author is without authority to preach. Authority is a specific quality, either of an apostolic calling or of ordination. To preach simply means to use authority, and that is exactly what is completely and utterly forgotten in these times. And that is what is the idea that one without Janu should not really go around teaching the Rig Veda, even if it is online, etc. So, if authority is not the quote unquote other, if it is in any sense merely just a higher potency within the identity, then there is no such thing as authority. If a teacher is enthusiastically conscious that he has expressed the doctrine which he is proclaiming at the sacrifice of all else, this consciousness may well give him determination, but it does not give him authority. His life as a proof of the rightness of the teaching, okay, is not the other. It is a simple reduplication. The fact that that teacher or that apostle gives proof that his teachings are so right, even that is not authority. The fact that he lives according to the doctrine does not prove that it is right, but only that because he is convinced of the righteousness of his teaching, he therefore lives according to it. Nothing more, nothing less, okay? The fact that he lives according to the doctrine does not make the doctrine right. It just proves that he believes that that doctrine is right. That does not give him authority. Authority is something else. On the other hand, whether a police official is a rascal or an upright man, as soon as he is on duty, he has authority. That is what authority is. In order to, and that authority is actually important, because without that authority, actually society falls. So what we must then question is that prosecute that rascal police officer, complain about him, etc., to someone else, someone with an even higher authority. But instead of saying that, the police officer's actual legal authorities are questioned at that moment. That no, you are a rascal and therefore I won't listen to you at this very moment. This is what I was saying while discussing J.S. Deepak's getting scolded by C.J. Chandrachud. That it's fair enough that after all is the lawyer and they are the judge, and they had the right to say that don't try to teach us, etc. It would be great if they had the same tone for Kapil Sibal, but just the fact that Desai Deepak is a famous online personality should not have any bearing on him being treated extra nice or extra cruelly in the court. The fact is that the judges have authority, Desai Deepak doesn't. So the authority needs to be respected, whether the judges themselves are corrupt or not. Without that authority, we become Pakistan. And that is the entire point we are doing this live stream basically. In order to throw more light on the concept of authority, so important for the sphere of the paradox religious, I will elaborate the dialectic of authority. Nino is saying that some contexts relate to Hinduism, but quite a few don't. I think most trads would agree with everything he's saying. Authority is inconceivable within the sphere of immanence. Okay? Authority is inconceivable within the sphere of immanence, or else it can only be thought of as something transitory. In this sphere of immanence, in this loka, etc., authority is inconceivable, or else it can only be thought of as something transitory, because the police officer's authority is transitory. But if we are talking about eternal authority, then that cannot be in this sphere of immanence. Okay, Here to Learn is saying, I doubt India can become as bad as Pakistan even if there is anarchy. But authority too depends on faith. We have faith in authority of Shankaracharya, but Shankaracharya is not an authority to Christians because they don't have faith in him. Similarly, Moses is no authority for us. Yes, there's no disagreement about that. They are talking about apostle only in the Christian lands. So I am saying that we have an equivalent of that, and in that case, is Shankaracharya's ideas up for debate by anyone and everyone, or do we take Shankaracharya's word for granted because he has divine authority? That is the point. Authority is inconceivable within the sphere of immanence, or else it can only be thought of as something transitory. Insofar as one may speak of authority in political, social and disciplinary connections, or of using authority, authority is only a transiting factor, because we are talking about in the immanence sphere. A passing thing which either vanishes later in time, because police nahi rahega, ye desh nahi rahega, maybe $1 million, 2 million साल बाद या 200 million साल बाद, तो उसका authority कहाँ से eternal होगा? वो तो सनातन नहीं है वो authority. Authority is only a transitory factor, a passing thing which either vanishes later in time or vanishes in so far as time and earthly life are transitory facts, which disappear with all their differentiations. The only difference which can be conceived as the basis for the relations between man and man as man is the difference within the identity of immanence. That is to say, the essential quality, essential equality. Essential equality again only in case of eternity. Not right here, right now. Right here, right now, Modi and you are not equal. But in 5 million years from now, you and Modi are maybe equally relevant or irrelevant. The individual man cannot be conceived as differing from all other men by a specific quality. Otherwise, all thought would cease, as in fact it quite consistently does in the sphere of paradox religion and of faith. All the human differences among men as men vanish before thought, and those differences become factors within the whole and within the quality of identity. For the moment it is my duty to respect and obey the difference, but religiously I may feel myself edified by the certainty that the differences may disappear in eternity. Those that single me out, and the differences which single me out as something great, and those that those that weigh me down, those differences which show that I'm really bad at something. And see this sentence, that this is pretty interesting. Religiously I may even though I may respect the differences of in the immanent society right here right now, but religiously I may feel myself edified by the certainty that the differences disappear in eternity. So eternity is again Sanatan, or in this case, in this context, Ananta. When it comes to in the context of Ananta, then everyone becomes equal, which is why Lord Shiva is also called Samapriya, because he loves everyone equally, even though we have a Varna system. And in a Varna system, there is absolutely no question of equality. Then why does Lord Shiva love everyone equally? Because he is eternity and he is Ananta. That is unknowingly what Kierkegaard has harped upon here. As a subject, it is my duty to honor and obey the king with undivided heart, but religiously I may feel strengthened by the thought that essentially I am a citizen of heaven, and that should I ever meet the king after death, I shall no longer be bound to him by the ties of obedience of a subject. In heaven, we will both be equal. Changing Lives is saying, in future, can you do a review of Prashant Kishore interview with Shoma Chaudhary? Oh, it's too long. Did he say something important? I saw about 15 minutes, 20 minutes of it. Who is Khudiram Bose? Arey, Google karo. He is one of the most famous Bengali revolutionaries. Where does authority drive? Authority, wait. Let's see what Here to Learn is saying. In Bastar, Naxals are authority and not government because they have a power over that area. Yes, but again, that's not religious authority. Those are immanent authorities. They are transitory. 2 दिन बाद नक्सल को मार के भगा देगा, वो authority भी नहीं रहेगा. That is the difference Kierkegaard is pointing out here. They are all transitory authority. Jesus God is merely a sacrifice for God. Where does authority derive authority from anyway? That is exactly the point of this article. He is saying some authorities are transitory. A genius may also have an authority. They are all transitory. A poet, a thinker may have some degree of authority. They are transitory. The only authority that's not transitory is the Sanatan authority, which comes from religion, which Shankaracharya has or an apostle has, because that is a divine authority. Because his religious institution has said that you have this authority. End of story. Who is Khudiram Bose? In future, okay, yeah, तो ये हो गया. He gave 4 points to the BJP build in 10 years as opposition. I see. Khudiram Bose was a revolutionary who was hanged. Yeah, and he was just 14 years old, I guess. Hindutva, hyper-nationalism, direct benefit. That's why they say equality is a Christian concept. Yeah. Again, everyone is equal in the eyes of God. That could be compared with Lord Shiva being Samapriya. But after death, everyone is equal. Those things are specified. So, at least the things we are discussing here, in that context, equality does not have to mean an essentially Christian concept. But of course, Christianity does tout equality a little more. Okay. Now we will get into some hints of Advaitavad as well, or an opposition to Advaitavad, maybe unknowingly. So, I am a citizen of heaven, and should I ever meet the king after death, I shall no longer be bound to him by the ties of obedience of a subject. Although this might be again a distinctly Christian thing, because what would happen in the Hindu concept? In the Hindu concept, you are no longer Kierkegaard after you die, and the king is no longer the king after they die. Depending on their karma, they are completely something else. They are on a different journey altogether. So this point is not even relevant for Hinduism. Such is the position as between man and man as man. But between God and man, there is an eternal, Sanatan, essential, qualitative difference between God and man, which cannot, at the risk of presumption, be allowed to disappear in the blasphemous thought that though certainly different in the transitory moment of time, okay, even though in the transitory moment, in the transitory moment they are different, so that man ought to obey and to pray God in this life. Man and God are different in this life. Nevertheless, the difference will in eternity vanish in an essential identity that blasphemous thought should not be entertained. This is what Kierkegaard is saying. Nevertheless, the difference will in eternity vanish in an essential identity, so that in eternity God and man, like king and servant, become equals. That should never be thought. Okay, listen to this example sentence once more and see how this is exactly a very strong opposition to Advaitavad. Such is the position as between man and man as man, but between God and man there is an eternal, essential and qualitative difference which cannot, at the risk of presumption, be allowed to disappear in that blasphemous thought that, though certainly different in the transitory moment of time, so that man ought to obey and to pray God in this life, nevertheless the difference will in eternity vanish in an essential identity, so that in eternity God and man, like king and servant, become equals. So this is kind of Dvaitavad, basically. He is being a proponent of. Nino is saying, but true loyalty for us doesn't just die like that. It is more like a bond between souls. Would there be loyalty after death for a king? Follower of Nordic or Egyptian religion now has no authority today because they were overpowered and killed, though they derived authority from gods. But in that case, we will just have to assume that the name has changed, because in those same lands, the descendants of those same people have come up with someone or the other who still has some divine authority. So it might not be the divine authority given to him by Thor or Odin. It's still divine authority given by Jesus. Kierkegaard needs to listen to history even in ancient Greeks and Egypt who hold similar philosophy with Advaita. Yeah, but there is opposition to Advaita in Hindu philosophy itself. So this kind of, I guess, should be similar to that. Shankaracharya is authority just because we believe that he was Shiva avatar. Exactly what is Kierkegaard's point. Between God and man, then, there is and remains an eternal, essential, qualitative difference. Dvaitavad. The paradox religious relationship, which quite rightly cannot be thought but only believed. Okay? It cannot be thought, only believed. That paradox religious relationship appears when God appoints a particular man to divine authority in relation, be it carefully noted, in relation to that which God has entrusted to him. The man thus called is no longer related as man to man as man, वो जिसके पास divine authority है. His relationship to other men is not that of a qualitative difference. Okay, he's not different to other men in terms of whatever good or bad, in aesthetics or in intelligence or something, in any kind of quality. That's not the difference between a man and an apostle, such as genius, exceptional gifts, position, etc. He is related paradoxically by having a special quality which no immanence can resolve in the equality of eternity, because it is essentially paradoxical and even after thought and even contrary to thought and not before or anterior to thought. It's not like they didn't give, you are not giving it a thought and therefore you are thinking that an apostle is starkly different from a normal man. It's not that. It's not before thought and it's not at the same time as thought. It's even after thought and even contrary to thought that you will have to conclude that an apostle is starkly has some differences from every other man, and he has divine authority, unquestionable authority. Otherwise, the entire edifice is useless. Otherwise, the framework falls, and when frameworks fall, it is that void is either filled up by some other worse framework, or it's just nihilism and mental health disasters like we see in the West today. If a man thus called that a sort of an apostle, if a man thus called has a doctrine to bring forth according to a divine command, and another man, let us suppose, of himself, and by himself discovered the same thing, okay, even if such a man came to the same conclusion that, see, these are my ideas, soul does this, there is the idea of karma, but he has come to the same conclusion and realization parallelly, then what happens? Then in all eternity, even then, the two things would not become equal, because the first man is different from every other man by virtue of his paradoxically special quality, which is the divine authority, and different from the immanent essential equality, okay, immanently essential equality, which is at the basis of all other human differences. So, you might actually end up with the same conclusions as Shankaracharya or any religious guru of today. But then, do you have the credentials? You might come up with better economic ideas than actual economics PhD guy. Sanjeev Sanyal is doing better history than history PhDs. Desai Deepak is doing better sociology than most sociology PhDs in the country. But most people are not taking them seriously, in the institutions at least. Now the public is taking them seriously, that's a different matter. There might be some different side effects that the value of those credentials fall in the first place. Now in our case, if the value of those credentials fall, that is great for India at the moment. But is it great for the society if the value of even all religious credentials disappear? Then what do we do? Then it's an ocean of Qawmi Pattharbazes. That is why I'm discussing this article, because you'll have a lot to think about and ponder over. The qualification that quote unquote an apostle belongs in the transcendental sphere, the sphere of paradox religion, which quite consistently also has a qualitatively different expression for the relation of other men to an apostle, namely, they are related to him in faith, whereas thought is and breeds and has its being in immanence. Thought is completely in the sphere or realm of immanence. But faith is not a transitory qualification, any more than the apostle's paradoxical qualification was transitory. Between man and man as man, then no established or continuous authority was conceivable. It was something transitory. But for the sake of the essential consideration of authority, however, we may dwell for a moment upon a few examples of so-called and in temporal conditions, that is in our realistic world conditions, true forms of authority. A king, it is assumed, has authority. Nevertheless, there is something disturbing in the idea of a king who is witty or an artist, because according to Kierkegaard, why does a king have to be witty or an artist? The explanation of this is surely that one naturally lays the stress on his royal authority, and so by comparison looks upon the more general human marks of distinction which you would look for in other people, that if your neighbor was witty and artistic, maybe that would be a great thing. And because you want to feel a kinship or some sort of man-to-man relevance with your king, in that, and to justify that, you might think or you might look for wittiness and artistry in your king. And Kierkegaard is opposing that. The explanation of this is surely that one naturally lays the stress on his royal authority, and so by comparison looks upon the more general human marks of distinction as something transitory, as something fortuitous, inessential, and disturbing. A government department is regarded as having authority within its orbit, and yet it would be disturbing if its ordinances were really clever, witty, or profound. A government department's actions don't have to be clever, witty, or profound to have authority. They have authority because they have authority. It's a circular argument. Otherwise, Pakistan, कोई institution का कुछ value नहीं है वहाँ पे. Like Sanjay Dixit or someone else was saying that in Pakistan, you give 1.5 lakh rupees in Pakistan, you can give a supari for anyone in the country. Anyone can be, you can hire anyone to kill anyone with just 1.5 lakh rupees. Everyone is fucking corrupt. Every institution is a joke, because no one has any authority. All their authority has been diluted. A government department is regarded as having authority within its orbit, and yet it would be disturbing if its ordinances were really clever, witty, and profound. Here again, the explanation is that, quite rightly, all the accent falls qualitatively on the authority. To ask whether a king is a genius with the intention that, if such were the case, of obeying him is in reality lessens the majesty. Okay, that if you obey your king only because he is a genius, not because he is king, or because the question conceals a doubt about the king. Okay, the question conceals a doubt as to whether one intends to submit to authority even, but that should not be the case, according to Kierkegaard. To be prepared to obey a government department if it can be clever is really to make a fool of it. To honor one's father because he is intelligent is impiety. You don't have to honor your father because he is intelligent. You have to honor your father because he is your father. That's the example he's giving. However, as has already been said, between man and man as man, authority, when it exists, is something transitory between man and man as men, not in the transcendental sense. And eternity does away with all forms of worldly authority. But now, with regard to the transcendental sphere, let us take an example as simple as possible, and for that very reason, as striking as can be. When Christ says, there is an eternal life, and when a theological student says, there is an eternal life, both say the same thing, and there is no more deduction, development, profundity, or thoughtfulness in the first expression than in the second. Both are same, basically. Both statements are judged both statements, if they are judged aesthetically, equally good. And yet, there is an eternal, in the transcendental realm, in the transcendental sense, there is an eternal qualitative difference between them. Christ, as God-man, is in possession of the specific quality of authority, which eternity can never mediate. It has nothing to do with eternity. Just as in all eternity, Christ can never be put on the same level as essential human equality. Christ taught, therefore, with authority. To ask whether Christ is profound or not is blasphemy, and is an attempt, whether conscious or not, to destroy him surreptitiously. For the question conceals a doubt. Okay, the question, knowingly or unknowingly, subconsciously, is hiding a doubt about Christ concerning his authority, and this attempt to weigh him and weigh him up is impertinent in its directness, behaving as though he were being examined, instead of which it is to him that all power is given in heaven and upon earth. And this is exactly what Rajarshi Nandy is saying, that Shastra mein likha hai to hai. And that guy who was debating me on Instagram, he was saying that a pure hardcore dogmatic approach to all scriptures is necessary for saving Hinduism, otherwise there's no point of Hindutva even. Yet nowadays it is seldom, very seldom, that one hears or reads a religious discourse which is framed correctly. The better among them often dabble a little in what one might call unconscious or well-meant rebellion by defending and upholding Christianity with all their strength with the wrong categories, giving in to the premises basically of the atheist or commie. Let's see some questions now. Shankaracharya derived authority by debating everyone else and proving the quality of his idea. This is exactly what I was talking about just 5 to 10 minutes back. Shankaracharya did not in fact debate anyone and everyone. He discussed other religious personalities. Shankaracharya was not going to debate Kanhaiya Kumar. Okay. Because there are some premises which are irrelevant to the atheist eye. What are you talking about? Life after death. There's no karma. You cannot prove it in a scientific way. So how was Shankaracharya going to debate them? Shankaracharya was only debating with people who agreed to some of at least some premises, right? Some religious transcendental premises were agreed upon. Based on that, they debated. And Shankaracharya also, the second point is that Shankaracharya debated people who had, again, divine authority. He did not debate random atheist commies, nor did he debate random people who did not have divine authority. He trained a generation such that they hold academic authority. Yes, he did. Are perhaps ISKCON Ramakrishna Mission type of organization an authority as well? In our society, authority is already misconstrued because everyone is breaking a stereotype every morning. So there anyone can start any ashram. So ISKCON and Ramakrishna Mission will obviously have authority. Anyone wearing a saffron already has some authority in the eyes of common people. Here to learn is saying they derive authority from popularity. Oh yeah, ISKCON and Ramakrishna. Yeah, you could say that. Yes, they are just taken by public authority and not by the sampradayas. Exactly, and this is exactly what Bharatiya Sabhyata is saying here. That is Kierkegaard's argument here. That this is why I'm saying that these are the arguments presented by Hindu trads. What Bharatiya Sabhyata is saying here is exactly what Kierkegaard is saying, but he is kind of also disagreeing with Kierkegaard. He is saying that ISKCON and Ramakrishna Mission, they are just public authority and not by sampradayas. Kierkegaard is saying yes, that authority based on sampradaya, which you are putting on a higher pedestal than what ISKCON has, is what Kierkegaard is saying or calling it the divine authority. Okay, then he's saying, but my question then, why did Newton, a science guy, made Western chronology in history when is studied in science? This is the book. Yes, like countries existing. Wait, I didn't get your question. But my question is then, why did Newton, a science guy, make Western chronology in history when he studied science? Yes, because the society is of course shaped epistemologically based on that place's religion, and also how science in West came about. That is also a pretty politico-religious question. See, what was Christianity selling basically? Christianity was saying that do these things, you will go to heaven. Do these good things, you will go to heaven. Do these bad things, you will go to hell. So there was no great thing to be had in that immanent life, because it's a feudal society anyway, pre-industrial. Science comes up and proposes that we are now pursuing some things which will give you benefits in this life, here and now, as opposed to after death. Here to learn, this is then saying, like countries existing, authority is derived to by circular reasoning. Yeah, pretty much. But that is transitory. Religious authority is not, at least according to Kierkegaard. But the Christians did the same thing to pagans. Hypocrisy. Yes, but he is not defending just Christianity here. His argument is about religious and divine authority in general. So basically, authority is derived by popularity and power. Kierkegaard is saying that should not be the case, because he will actually pursue that topic, that angle as well, whether it's based on popularity or not. But my question is, certain practices are bad too, like no round earth in Islam, like Pakistani Maulana doing that. Yes, and that was one of the points also why I started discussing this article, that if it's kind of a given, it's kind of an agreed upon point that we have to agree to some authority of our religious institutions and religious figures. Then where do we draw the line? When religious figures or scriptures start recommending things which are absolutely unacceptable today, maybe Hinduism or maybe other religions, then what that has not been addressed by Kierkegaard, at least not in this article. He has addressed those things in other articles. The justification I have come up with in my head, at least reading just this article today evening only, is that then the society will gradually respond to those bad practices, because any practice that does not benefit the society in general will not be accepted by the society for an eternity. Okay, that is why I say that there was no such thing as patriarchy, because patriarchy was never really done away with until physical comfort or physical strength became irrelevant after the Industrial Revolution. If patriarchy was really bad and was oppressing people, it was not benefiting anyone, patriarchy would be thrown out. So many oppressive kings have been thrown out. So many oppressive religions have been kicked out from here and there. Patriarchy was never thrown out, that so-called patriarchy. So bad practices of religions, if they don't bring benefit, and if those people go to other countries and see that other religions are practicing or are running their countries in such a way that they are making progress, then those things will change in those societies. But we're talking about divine authority in a universal religious sense, not just Christianity. A population can be forced to believe anything and accept me as authority or die. Prophets derived authority like that. No, absolutely not. Just because someone forces you to believe, you don't start believing it automatically. People start believing it when they have really accepted it. Nehru tried forcing so many things. Okay, let's not bring Nehru into it because he was not really an authoritative dictator. But Nazism. Did entire Germany become Nazi? How did Nazism die with Hitler? All those people who were Nazis, they stopped becoming Nazi. Or how did so many people not become Nazi? Nazism, if it's really the epitome of authoritarianism, why were there so many non-communists in communist Russia? Or right after Soviet Union falls, everyone stops being a communist all of a sudden. How do those things happen? Authority is not gained with just strength, and if it is again that transitory authority he's talking about. It is not that eternal authority. If it is done with force, Nehru Gandhi did force socialism on us, yes, but everyone didn't think that socialism is great. We just had to live with it. Like there have always been people opposed to socialism. Ambedkar did not live under socialism, fair enough, but people like Rajarshi, he was forever opposed to socialism. He lived under socialism, he had to. Like I today live under a welfare state, I don't want to. Doesn't mean I'm accepting welfareism and freebies in my mind. How can you say that? You just shared communists who don't like China, who don't like China preaching it in America. Yes, and that woman has not been forced to like communism by Chinese government, because she was saying that the Chinese government sucks, and she's saying Chinese government is not even communist. That exactly proves my point. And everyone accepted Islam due to force. Yes, in their mind they didn't. Only their sons and daughters started saying that yes, we are the true Muslims now. Off topic, but can you talk about what happened to Muhammad through recent scan? How is that important? Here to learn. That video blew my mind. I have met so many Chinese and not one even likes communism. Exactly. That is what my point is. My point is that liking or accepting someone in the mind does not happen with force, and even if it does, it's transitory. But what Kierkegaard is talking about is the eternal authority. So now he's talking about the church defending Christianity on that atheist premises. The better among them often dabble a little in what one might call unconscious or well-meant rebellion by defending and upholding Christianity with all their strength, with the wrong categories. Let me take an example. The first that comes to hand. I prefer to choose a German because then I know that no one, not even the most stupid, not even the most wrong-headed, could imagine that I am writing about a matter which in my belief is infinitely important in order to point to some clergyman or the other. Bishop Saylor, James Saylor, in a homily for the 5th Sunday in Lent. Lent is a Christian Ramadan sort of a thing. Preaches on the text John 7:47-51. He chooses these two verses. Quote, "He that is of God heareth God's word." Okay? If someone is a man of God, they will hear God's word. And quote, "If a man keep my sayings, he shall never die." And continues, quote, "In these words of the Lord, 3 great mysteries are solved, mysteries over which men have racked their brains from the beginning of time." There we have it. Kierkegaard is now being sarcastic. There we have it. The word quote unquote mystery, and particularly the 3 great mysteries, and then in the next phrase, over which men have racked their brains, immediately leads one's thoughts onto the profound in an intellectual sense, pondering, searching, speculation. Yet, how can a simple apodictic statement be profound? Now we have a gigantic twist in his argument, okay? Now you will understand he was not talking from a Christian fundamentalist standpoint. Okay, now check this out. He is saying these sentences like if a man keeps my sayings, he shall never die. How can this be profound in an intellectual sense? It's not, because you can't actually be immortal. It can be true only if you have faith in the religion. And therefore Kierkegaard is his entire argument is based on the premise that I'm not forcing you to believe it. But if you do believe it, if you take part in this play acting, or in this imagination, in this gameplay, then you have to believe it. And you have to believe it because it's being said. If you start playing chess, then don't start hitting the chess objects like carom. That's what Kierkegaard is saying, and that's what I think we all have been saying. So now the gigantic twist, okay? How can a simple apodictic statement be profound? An apodictic statement which is only what it is because so and so has said it. A statement which is not to be understood or fathomed but simply believed. How can that be profound? Okay, so he is not talking about giving great compliments to Christianity. He is saying keep Christianity as it is. How can any man imagine that a mystery is solved in a learned speculative way by a direct statement, by an assertion? Okay. The question is, after all, is there an eternal life? The answer, there is an eternal life. What in heaven's name is profound about that? If Christ had not said it, and if Christ was not he who he said he was, then if the statement itself is profound, it must be possible to discover its profundity, that there is an eternal life. Let us take the example of Herr Peterson, the theological student, who also says there is an eternal life. Would it ever strike anyone to tax him with profundity on account of a direct statement? The decisive thing is not the statement, but the fact that it was Christ who said it. But the confusing thing is that, as though in order to tempt people to believe, they talk about profundity. Now Kierkegaard is criticizing the bullshitting, the takayyabazi, to fool people into conversion. This is one of the most fascinating parts about Kierkegaard's writing. You see, he's saying, why should you come up with these bullshit justifications and apologetics just to tempt people into believing you? You should be able to convince people, if at all you are convincing people, by saying that it is said by Christ, believe it. But don't sell it to people that, see, there is so much logic, there's so much philosophy, there's so much eternal truth, etc., and therefore believe it, therefore become a Christian. No, there's no such thing. There's no actual eternal life. There's no actual immortality. Don't sell the bullshit to convert people to Christianity. In order to speak correctly, a Christian priest would have to quite simply say, we have Christ's word for it, that there is an eternal life, and that settles the matter. But if someone actually follows Kierkegaard's Kierkegaard's suggestion here, then Christianity's conversion game will be over. And you see what Kierkegaard said previously, that he was suggesting to Saint Paul that I dare not force you to take this up. So Kierkegaard is always operating on the premise that forced conversion is not even in the question. Conversion, approaching someone to convert, is even not in the question. You don't have to convert. You like it. He is kind of treating Christianity as like Hinduism actually is. This is what I've always noticed with Jordan Peterson as well. Christian apologetics is always about trying to make Christianity more like Hinduism, taking out all the evils of Christianity out of it, the evil conversion parts out of it. Now here, I made a footnote to myself, okay, that then is all this therefore, whatever Kierkegaard is saying, opposed to apologetics? Because then Kierkegaard might say that, or apologetics, or those so-called quote-unquote later philosophizations, which are an instrument to justify or reinterpret some evil things said in a religion, to appeal to a new audience. Okay, is Kierkegaard then saying apologetics are not important, should not be done, later philosophizations should not be done in order to fool people into believing it? You have to believe it just because Christ said it. Or is this entire article an apologia itself? I am asking that question to myself, and I'm asking that to you as well. What do you think? Because Kierkegaard does not actually address this, does not answer my question rightly here. But he does get into something in the very next sentence, okay? And he uses the exact same word I used. I just wrote here that, see, I wrote it here, okay? I wrote, is all this therefore opposed to apologetics or the quote-unquote later philosophizations? Or is it apologetics itself? In the very next sentence, I noticed then, after writing this, Kierkegaard writes, there is no question here of racking one's brains or philosophizing. So in a way, you could say that he did answer my question, that yes, fuck apologetics. But even then, is he unknowingly giving an apologetic? That this is how Christianity is, accept it or don't accept it. There is no question here of racking one's brains, quote unquote, or philosophizing, but simply that Christ said it, not as a profound thinker, but with divine authority. Let us go further. Let us suppose that a man believes in eternal life on Christ's word, okay? In that case, he believes without any fuss about being profound and searching and philosophical and quote unquote racking his brains, that Christ ne bola hai eternal life hai. No one is accepting Christ ne bola hai ki eternal life hai and then going into the philosophy of it or coming up with different metaphors or pondering over whether actually there is a life or not, or can it be proven or not. That man is supposed to be happy with the fact that Christ has said it, and end of story. On the other hand, take the case of a man who racks his brains and ruminates profoundly on the question of immortality. Would he not be justified in denying that this direct statement is a profound answer to the question? So he's taking the side of anyone opposed to Christianity or Christian dogma here. So he's saying that if a person who does not take Christ's word as Mahavakya, wouldn't he be justified in justifying in denying the profoundness of this statement that there is an afterlife? Because there is no afterlife in the end, actually, in real life. So, what Plato says on immortality really is profound. He's defending Plato here, but his argument is different. What Plato says on immortality really is profound, reached after deep study. But then, poor Plato has no authority whatsoever. He is just a philosopher proposing some of his cool ideas. That is his argument here. Whether we have some authoritative institution in the society or not. Here to learn is saying, okay, now that's reasonable. Me being a follower of that system by faith is necessary condition. The authority derives authority from my faith and his authority. Right. What do you think of Jungian psychology and Jordan Peterson? That's a long answer. I'll give it a little later after this chapter is done. If we have time, that is, or if I don't forget. Okay. So in the meanwhile, the thing is this: doubt and superstition, which make of faith a vain thing. Okay, this is a very important statement. Up until this point, you might have thought he is just some Christian dogmatic nut job believer, right? Now he's saying superstition is a bad thing, and so is doubt. He is putting doubt and superstition on the exact same level of criticism. Okay, and he's saying both of these things hamper the idea of faith. In the meanwhile, the thing is this: doubt and superstition, which make of faith a vain thing, have among other things also made men shy of obedience, of bowing before authority. This rebelliousness worms its way even into the thought of better people, perhaps unbeknown to them, perhaps unknowingly, and so begins all the extravagance, which at the bottom is only treachery about that so-called profundity and beauty, which can but only faintly perceive. Okay, when you become shy of obedience, then you become rebellious, and because of that begins all the extravagance, which according to Kierkegaard is just treachery, and that leads to the arguments of those so-called profundity and beauty, which one can notice only faintly in the theology. And so if one had to describe the Christian religious discourse as it is now heard with a single definite predicate, one would have to say it was affected. Normally, in referring to a priest's affectation means sort of a signal theory that have you seen that viral Instagram reel where it's a clip from some movie, okay? this is an LA American girl, young girl, who is a waitress at some coffee bar, a coffee cafe, and a customer comes and says, "Give me this coffee," and the girl behaves like she is not very interested. She speaks in that typical annoying LA girl accent that, "Yes, what will you have? Okay, coffee." So she is pretending that she does not give a fuck about this life, this job, or etc. And then the customer gets really pissed off and says that, "Why are you talking like that? Why can't you talk like a real person? Why aren't you talking in your real voice? That's just affectation." So in this case, you could say it's kind of like signal theory, that everything you are saying and doing is you playing a character. You're not saying and doing anything because you really believe or believe in it. You are saying or doing that thing to come across as someone who would have said or done those things. A continuation of which, an extension of which, is the virtue signaling theory. Virtue signaling. So that is similar to what affectation is in this case. That you want to give up the vibe of you being someone who you're not. Normally, in referring to a priest's affectation, one means the way he dresses or gets himself up, or that he talks in a sugary voice. That what we have seen in Bollywood films, that a church priest is always a nice, peaceful guy. Or that he rolls his R's like a foreigner, because he might want to give off the vibe that he's from Russia. So he maybe pronounces R's like that because he might try to say that, might try to give off the vibe that he knows, he has some knowledge of Orthodox Christianity from Russia as well. Or that he rolls his R's like a foreigner, wrinkles his brow, or uses violent gestures and ridiculous poses. All this, however, is of less importance, though it is desirable that he should not do so. But the pernicious thing is when the whole train of his thought is affected, when the price of its orthodoxy is an emphasis in an entirely wrong place. When he calls for faith in Christ, when he preaches faith in him on grounds which simply cannot be the object of faith. If a son were to say, "I obey my father not because he's my father, but because he's a genius, or because his orders are always profoundly intelligent," then the filial obedience is affected. The son accentuates something entirely wrong. He emphasizes the intellectual aspect, the profundity in a command of the father. Whereas a command is, of course, indifferent to that qualification. The command does not give a fuck whether you find that command profound or not. The command is a command coming from the father. The son wishes to obey by virtue of the father's intellectual profundity. And to obey by virtue thereof is just what is not possible, because his critical attitude as to whether the command is profound or not undermines the obedience. And so too. And haven't you seen this happening in first world countries? The entire parent-child relationship has gone to hell because of this exact problem being pointed out by Kierkegaard in 1847. And so too, it is affectation to speak of adopting Christianity and believing Christ because of the greater profundity of the doctrine. He is saying, you don't have to bother about great philosophy or profundity in the doctrine. If you want to believe it, believe it because Christ said it. And there's some benefit in just believing something in something higher or the other, without question. Which is why I'm saying that atheists absolutely should follow Hindu ritualistic practices. Except, of course, killing, sacrificing animals. By putting the accent in entirely the wrong place. Okay. And so too, it is affectation to speak of adopting Christianity and believing Christ because of the great profundity of the doctrine. By putting the accent in entirely the wrong place, one only makes a show of orthodoxy, okay? This is signal theory. You are signaling that as if you are such a great orthodox priest, okay? But if you are really orthodox, you would not have to depend on profundity of the doctrine. The whole of modern philosophy is therefore affected. And and the translator makes a note here that when Kierkegaard says modern philosophy, he means Hegel. The whole of modern philosophy is therefore affected because it has done away with obedience on the one hand and authority on the other, and then in spite of everything claims to be orthodox. A priest who is quite correct in his discourse would, when quoting the words of Christ, have to speak in this way. This is Kierkegaard's suggestion to suggestion to the priest that you should have said that these words were spoken by him meaning Jesus Christ, to whom according to his own statement, to his meaning Jesus, according to his own statement is given all power in heaven and on earth. You who hear me must consider within yourselves whether you will bow before his authority or not, accept and believe the words or not. But if you do not wish to do so, then for heaven's sake do not go and accept the words because they are clever or profound or wonderfully beautiful, because that is a mockery of God. This is Kierkegaard again saying, and which basically shows he is absolutely against the idea of conversions or forced conversions, isn't it? Because he is now repeatedly, about second or the third time, he is saying that if you don't want to believe it, don't believe it. Don't take part in this make-believe world. But if you do take part in this, believe it just for the sake of it, on face value. Don't wake up one morning and say, I broke a stereotype today. For once the command of authority, of the specific paradox authority, meaning religious authority, is posited, then all relationships are qualitatively changed. Then the kind of acceptance which was previously allowable and desirable becomes a crime and presumptuous. But now how can an apostle prove that he has authority? If he could prove it physically, then he would not be an apostle. He has no other proof than his own statement. That has to be so, because otherwise the believer's relationship to him would be direct instead of being paradoxical. In the transitory conditions, that is in the worldly immanent conditions, in the transitory conditions of authority between man and man as man, authority will normally be physically recognizable by power. कि इसके पास गुंडे हैं, soldiers है, police है. An apostle has no other proof than his own statement, and at the most his willingness to suffer anything for the sake of that statement. His words in this respect will be short. He will say, I am called by God. Do with me what you will, scourge me, persecute me, but my last words are my first, which is, I am called by God and I make you eternally responsible for what you do against me. End quote. Let us suppose that an apostle were really to have power in the worldly sense, had great influence or even powerful connections, the forces with which one is victorious over men's opinions and judgments. So if he does have some military power, etc., then if he used them, he would have lost his cause. This is Kierkegaard's main argument. Kierkegaard is saying that if a religious divine authority figure actually uses force or violence, that is force and violence in this immanent world, then that person ceases to be a divine authority, because a divine authority should not require those things. By using power, he would have defined his efforts as essentially identical with those of other men who are not divine authorities. And yet, an apostle is only what he is through his paradoxical heterogeneity, that he is different from everyone, through having divine authority, which he can possess absolutely and unchanged, even if he is looked down upon by men as less than the filth they walk upon, as St. Paul says. Okay, he is saying an apostle should even accept the fact that people might look down upon him as if he is worse than filth. Even then he should not have a problem with it, because in his heart he knows he has divine authority. It's his job to persuade people, or just to say to people, since we know that Kierkegaard is basically seems to be against conversion, forced conversion at least, that he has divine authority. If someone thinks it's a fun thing, Christianity is a great thing, they will accept it, and they will have to accept it just because of that, not any other thing. And for that, if someone doesn't believe you and thinks you are worse than filth, accept it and suck it up. That's what Kierkegaard is saying. Now his third argument, and we have just 2 more pages left. Let me have some coffee now. So the prophet didn't need to invade Kaaba. Why do you want my throat to be cut off? I am not replying that. Genius has, and in terms of, since he's talking about in the Christian context at least, with Christian lexicon at least, we could say that then the crusades, etc., colonization and missionary activities, that would be opposed by Kierkegaard in that case. Genius has only, now this is the third argument, Genius has only an immanent teleology, which we discussed earlier. Immanent teleology meaning again the purposes which are served only in this immanent physical material world. The apostle is absolutely paradoxically teleologically placed. If a man can be said to be situated absolutely teleologically, then he is an apostle. अरे नाक में क्या the doctrine, if a man can be said to be situated absolutely teleologically, then he is an apostle. The doctrine communicated to him is not a task which he is given to ponder over. It is not given him for his own sake. He is on the contrary on a mission and has to proclaim the doctrine and use authority. Just as a man sent into the town with a letter has nothing to do with its contents. Now this part, this previous sentence, you might think this is talking about conversion again, but first and foremost though we have taken out forced conversion out of the way, but what he means here might not actually be conversion, and why we will get into that in the last sentence of this article. You'll see what he means by when he says that what are really the duties of the apostle, not just to convert. Apostle and missionary is not the same thing. Apostle has other works as well. So this does not have to necessarily mean conversion as of yet. But even if it is conversion, it's not forced conversion because he has taken out all those legs anyway. But let's listen to the argument fully. The doctrine communicated to him is not a task which he is given to ponder over. It is not given for him for his own sake. He is on the contrary on a mission and has to proclaim the doctrine and use authority. Just as a man sent into the town with a letter, like a messenger, has nothing to do with its contents of the message, but has only to deliver it. Just as a minister who is sent into a foreign court is not responsible for the content of the message, but only has to convey it correctly. In the same way, an apostle has only to be faithful in his service and to carry out his task. Therein lies the essence of an apostle's life of self-sacrifice. Even if he were never persecuted, in the fact that he is quote-unquote poor yet making many rich, that he never dares take the time or the quiet or carefreeness in order to grow rich. Intellectually speaking, he is like a tireless housewife who herself hardly has time to eat. That is supposed to be the life of an apostle according to Kierkegaard. He is like a tireless housewife who herself hardly has time to eat. So busy is she preparing food for others. And even though at first he might have hoped for a long life, so basically you see he is recommending for apostles the life that was recommended by Manusmriti to Brahmins anyway. And even though at first, so busy is she, that housewife, preparing food for others, that she has hardly time to eat herself. And even though at first he might have hoped for a long life, his life to the very end will remain unchanged. For there will always be new people to whom to proclaim the doctrine. Is this conversion? I have marked it, but later I got the answer. It does not have to be conversion. There are other things that Kierkegaard has in mind. Although a revelation is a paradoxical factor which surpasses man's understanding, one can nevertheless understand this much, which has moreover proved to be the case everywhere, that a man is called by a revelation to go out in the world to proclaim the word of God, to act and to suffer, to a life of uninterrupted activity as the Lord's messenger. But that a man should be called by a revelation to sit back and enjoy his possession. Now he's being sarcastic and he's actually criticizing someone called Mag Adler, okay? Just Google and let me know, please. I forgot to Google it myself. Who is Mag Adler, who he is making fun of now, okay, in this following sentence? He's saying a priest or an apostle is not supposed to have a life like a man should be called by a revelation to sit back and enjoy his possessions undisturbed, in active literary, in comfort, momentarily clever, and afterwards as publisher and editor of the uncertainties of his so-called cleverness. That is something approaching blasphemy. The translator has said that this is a reference to Mag Adler. The name seems familiar, but I don't remember who is Mag Adler. It is otherwise with genius. It has only an immanent teleology. It develops itself. Now we are back to what genius is. It develops itself, and while developing itself, this self-development projects itself as its work. It thus receives importance, perhaps even great importance, but it is not teleologically situated in regard to the world and to others. Genius lives in itself, and humorously might live withdrawn and self-satisfied. without for that reason taking its gifts in vain. Okay, because of that reason, without taking those gifts in vain, so long as it develops itself earnestly and industriously, the genius. Following its own genius, regardless of whether others profit by it or not. Genius is therefore in no sense inactive and works within itself, perhaps harder than a dozen businessmen put together, but none of its achievements have any exterior telos. Telos meaning from teleology, the fact that the purpose is everything. That is at once the humility, at the same time it is the humanity and the pride of the genius. The humanity lies in the fact that it does not define itself teleologically in relation to any other man, as though there were anyone who needed it. Its pride lies in the fact that it immanently relates itself to itself. Okay, it is the, now he's giving an example with the nightingale bird, that it is the humility or modesty of the nightingale to not require anyone to listen to it, but it is also the pride of the nightingale to not care whether anyone listens to it or not. You could call this, I have called this, named this the arrogance of humility. I've seen it in many cases that someone is in fact so humble that they become arrogant. You could assign this to the actual whatever evil Brahmins we've had, a lot of whom were actually living pious lives without on just bhiksha etc., on alms, but were practicing untouchability. Humility caused them to be arrogant. So it is the humility of the nightingale to not require anyone to listen to it, but it is also the pride of the nightingale to not care whether anyone listens to it or not. The dialectic of genius, the lexicon of genius, terminology of genius will give particular offense in our times, where the masses, the many, the public, and other such abstractions. In the previous article, he has heavily criticized these abstract ideas of the public, etc., which are, according to him, just pointless group identities, abstract group identities. The dialect of genius will give particular offense in our times, where the masses, the many, the public, and other such abstractions contrive to turn everything topsy-turvy. The so-called honored public, the domineering masses, wish geniuses to express that it exists for their sake. They want Hans Zimmer to say that Hans Zimmer exists for your sake. Hans Zimmer might even say it, but it doesn't have to be true. Hans Zimmer likes making that music. At the end of the day, in some way or the other, he is making that music for himself as well. He loves that process of making that music. He loves the process of doing that background score for Christopher Nolan. So the public, they only see one side of the dialectic of genius. That is, and by seeing that just one side of that genius, they take offense. Now he's defending genius as well. So he's not opposed to geniuses and just in favor of apostle or something. And the public takes offense at its pride, the pride of the genius, and do not perceive that the same thing is also modesty and humility. The honored public and the domineering masses would therefore also take the existence of apostle in vain. They would not also understand and reject the authority of the apostle, because they are dumb fucks. Because it is certainly true that he exists, the apostle exists absolutely for the sake of others. Okay, Hans Zimmer, who does not want to or does not exist for the sake of others, the public wants Hans Zimmer to exist for the sake of others. But whereas the real spiritual guru, impoverished in a temple, actually is living for you, there you are saying it's Brahminical patriarchy and you don't want to listen to his religious authority. Just a few weeks back, I was explaining the idea of mantras, basics, some bija mantra, what is that? We got into a discussion about it and I was explaining it to a commie atheist friend. And she said that, so the idea that a bija mantra can only be given by a guru, isn't that a way to sort of enslave you to a guru? Now, I was in a very good mood and so I didn't counter her too harshly, but later on the counter argument actually came to my mind later on that, okay, so you'll pay for your therapist, you look for life coaches, you look for motivational speakers on Instagram, but all you have a problem with is just the guru. ऐसे कैसे चलेगा? So this is what Kierkegaard is also pointing out, that जो तुम्हें attention देने के लिए बैठा है, उसको तुम्हें बोल रहे हो कि तुम्हारा क्या authority है? Who gave you the divine authority? But the genius who is not living and surviving just for you, there you are saying that why aren't you giving me more attention? For it is certainly true that he, the apostle, exists absolutely for the sake of others, is sent out for the sake of others. But it is not the masses, and not mankind, and not the public, not even the highly educated public, which is his Lord and Master, but God. And the apostle is one who has divine authority to command both masses and the public. The humorous self-sufficiency of genius is the unity of a modest resignation, a humble resignation in the world, and also a proud elevation above the world. It is a dichotomy when it comes to a genius, which is of being an unnecessary superfluity and also, at the same time, a precious ornament. If the genius is an artist, then he accomplishes his work of art, but neither he nor his work of art has a telos outside him. And this sentence I underlined because I have had an idea for about 1 or 2 years now, because I'm a musician myself and I've faced so many rejection from so many clients. I had come up with this statement that, and I quoted myself here basically, just to keep in mind that this was my idea, that, and this seems to be corroborated by Kierkegaard, that art has no implicit value. It only has explicit or assigned value, okay? Except to the creator itself. No song is objectively good or bad. Only the person who made that song can think that, yes, I really made a good song or I really made a bullshit song. But in terms of everyone else calling it good or bad, there's absolutely no concrete basis whatsoever, okay? I have had so many music projects which I didn't like. The client accepted it. I made so many good things that the client rejected. There are so many pieces that I have thought are my best works. They have been rejected at the very first listen. But also, there are so many suggestions given by clients which I thought were bullshit, but then I accepted them just because they are clients, and then the song actually turned out to be good, in which case even I was wrong myself. So, not only a good song or a bad song is a 100% subjective idea, but also after the song has passed through the creator and the client phase in the audience realm, in that realm, the song's value completely becomes assigned by other people, okay? Most people listen to most songs because someone said that they like that artist, okay? Because that artist is listening to that artist is the aspirational model now. Like watching Game of Thrones becomes an aspirational model. Or some people don't listen to Arijit Singh, like in the metalhead scene. They don't listen to Bollywood just because they know Bollywood is mainstream. Some people don't watch Game of Thrones just because it's become so mainstream that it's not the cool edgy thing to do anymore. Even though Game of Thrones might really be the best thing ever, they have not watched it just because it's mainstream. So you see, it does not matter whether Game of Thrones is implicitly valuable or not. Some people are watching it because everyone else is watching it. Some people are not watching Game of Thrones because everyone else is watching it. And then there is the issue of, like, it especially happens in the case of classical concert. Most people go to classical concerts because they want to brag about it to other people, that अरे आज रात रशीद खान सुन रहा हूँ मैं डोवरलैंड में बैठ के. And then there's the issue of mood swings of people which vary from every moment to moment. A client may reject a song of mine at a moment just because he was happy, or he may reject it just because he was pissed off, or he might have rejected it because he was happy, because in his happy mood he did not like that song. He might have liked it if he was angry, or some song he liked just because he was in a bad mood at that moment. And so you talk to any professional musician, any composer arranger who works in the client musician relationship, they will tell you that it has happened many times. With even there's a famous interview with a roundtable conference with who's that woman, वो शिकारा मूवी बनाया था ना, controversial Kashmiri Exodus movie where they whitewashed everything. That director's wife, Anupama Chopra, Anupama Chopra was doing a great roundtable interview with Amit Trivedi, Vishalan Shekhar, and Ehsan Nurani from Shankar Ehsan Loy. So there Vishalan Shekhar openly admit, and then the rest of them admit as well. And anyone who works in this scene knows that many times a client is asking such a bullshit change or demand that the composer actually gets fed up and says that yes, I'm doing it. I'll send it to you in half an hour or 1 hour. कि मिक्सिंग में कुछ ऐसा थोड़ा सटल एक चेंज चाहिए जो करने से कि म्यूजिशियन को पता है कि ये गान का पूरा भोसड़ा हो जाएगा, बट ये क्लाइंट को चाहिए. At some point, you really put your foot down and say that, yes, I'm doing it. And 1 hour later, just send the same piece. Don't touch it at all. And he will say, yeah, now it's absolutely fine. Because it's a goddamn placebo. There is no implicit value in that song. उसका mood उस 1 घंटे में change हो गया है, उसको अब अच्छा लग रहा. For absolutely no fucking reason. No scientific reason. And that is what is being corroborated by Kierkegaard here. He's saying, if the genius is an artist, then he accomplishes his work of art, but neither he nor his work of art has a telos, a purpose outside of him. Or he is an author who abolishes every teleological relation to his environment and humorously defines himself as a poet. Lyrical art has certainly no telos outside it. And whether a man writes a short lyric or folios, it makes no difference to the quality of the nature of his work. The lyrical author is only concerned with his production, enjoys the pleasure of producing, exactly, often perhaps only after pain and effort. But he has nothing to do with others. बाकी को अच्छा लगेगा कि नहीं लगेगा उसके हाथ में बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. And this is the last paragraph of the article, so listen very carefully. Insanely juicy stuff are said here. He does not write in order to enlighten men, okay, or in order to help them along the right road, or in order to bring about something, okay. The artist is not doing for those things. He is doing it because he likes that procedure of making that song. He does not write in order that. In short, the same is true of every genius. No genius has in order that. But the apostle has absolutely and paradoxically in order that. The apostle is actually doing things to enlighten men, in order to help them along the right road, or to bring about something. Okay, and this is what I was saying, that what is the duty of an apostle? Is it just conversion? No. In Kierkegaard's opinion, these are the jobs of an apostle. These may or may not be along with conversion, but he does not maintain conversion here. You could interrupt one of these things as conversion, but it's not outright conversion. This could mean general spiritual guidance, etc. But here again he is saying that genius जो कर रहा है उससे तुम satisfied नहीं हो. तुम genius से मांग रहे हो apostle वाला चीज़ें. That is what we see even today, kind of, that we are expecting all sorts of guidance, fitness से लेकर spirituality सब भोसड़ी का Bollywood actor से सीखना है. But वो चीज़ें वो specialized domains के लिए अलग लोग बैठे हैं. So the apostle is supposed to, the apostle is there. The apostle has absolutely and paradoxically exists to enlighten men, or in order to help them along the right road, in order to bring about something. Okay, but genius or the artist does not give a fuck about that. And I have made one other point here. This is the article is now over. Okay, but the point I've made is that since the artist does not actually write in order that to enlighten men or to help them along the road, etc., or to bring about something, but you see, this is not what woke artists of today do. This is not what woke movies of today do. Then isn't then woke artists are actually wannabe apostles? Therefore, wokeism is a religion, isn't it? Because they are actually betraying the very core basic rule of being an artist. They are not doing it just because they like doing it. They are doing it because they want to enlighten men about racism, etc., about transgenderism, to help them to be an ally, to bring them along the right road. Okay. So you see, woke artists are wannabe apostles. And that is the end of this article. And now one paragraph about the author, which might surprise you. Soren Kierkegaard, 1813 to 1855, continues to exercise a wide influence on philosophy, literature, and theology. After a youth spent cultivating the lifestyle of a romantic aesthete, he finished his studies at the University of Copenhagen with the dissertation on the topic called On the Concept of Irony. Many of his books were published under exotic pseudonyms and explored different dimensions of life outside Christianity. Okay? Dimensions of life outside Christianity. These include his famous book, Either or, Fear and Trembling, and The Concept of Anxiety. And according to Jordan Peterson, Kierkegaard is the father of anxiety. I mean, he has basically discovered the idea of anxiety. He also wrote a number of more directly devotional works, including works of love and the collection Spiritual Writings, edited by George Pattison. Now listen to this last line. But in the last years of his life, he attacked the established church in a series of polemical leaflets. Greta Thunberg, AOC, Bernie Sanders are apostles, but I don't blame them for being apostles. They are politicians. The idea of democracy and politicians is a missionary work in itself. You have to go and tell people that you are in darkness, you don't know that you are being ruled by a bad government. I am convincing you, I am telling you that I have a better idea. So politics today is a very Abrahamic missionary concept in itself, so I don't blame them for it. What is inherently wrong with trying to bring about something with art? I intend to do so with my novels. It is inherently wrong because then your focus is not on telling a good story, because your focus is on something else. And when your focus is not on that, if your story ends up being good, it will be a side effect of your message. But the message should be a side effect of a good story. That is the difference between woke art and previous Hollywood movies. For example, Sylvester Stallone's movies, Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies, Will Smith's movies. Okay, so many movies with black people, with great action heroes, etc. in those movies. Those movies have entertained and inspired so many people around the world. So many people have gotten into workouts, and so many people have become more masculine in quote unquote because of those movies, right? It did not require an Indian from West Bengal in those movies to be represented in order for Indians to be inspired by those. Why? Because those movies had great stories. But why are woke movies all bullshit? Because their focus is not on stories. Their focus is on representing. Tulsidas, definitely. Are Bhaktas like Tulsidas, Mirabai, Ruhidas authority? Not according to any stretch of any traditionalist religious argument. They are. I mean, they would themselves say that they are not authority, because they are also saying that scripture is sarvapuri, and whoever is that sort of a religious leader, guru, mathadipati, they are the authority. He was really well learned and had direct connection with Lord Hanuman. Yes. Many writers and creators do create to bring about something. Yes, and that's when it usually sucks. Why is West Bengal's movie industry so bad for so many decades? Why are all poets writing about periods and depression only? Because their first and foremost motive is a message. Okay, message kya hai? So it's not a good story. I didn't watch Game of Thrones because everybody else was watching it. But then I'm also not interested in movies and serials at all. Yeah, then fair enough. You don't believe in there's pattern in art which makes art universally beautiful. No, I don't believe anything makes art universally beautiful. It may be beautiful to the creator. Jyotish are basically therapists only. I have seen them talk a lot about person's thoughts and giving suggestions to fix that. Yes. उसके लिए वो थेरेपी के लिए बैठा है, लोग उसको नहीं पसंद है. My family Pandit ji does the job of 10 therapists. Exactly. He is very well read and articulate on dharmic texts. Yeah, exactly. If I start a religion and a few people follow, do I become an authority of here to learnism? Basically, yes. Chairman mouse statues. Read above comments. Yes. Andrew Tate को apostle बना दो. শ্যামা পোকা নাকে হয়তো না, ও শ্যামা পোকা না, আমার মনে হয় দাড়ি ফাড়ি এই মাইকে আটকে গেছিল. কফি ঠান্ডা হয়ে যায় না? Yes, I'm taking ice coffee then. Just in the AC it's become ice coffee. Makes sense. When we look at our gods, none of them care about who is following. They reveal their divinity and just let those who want to follow. Yes, those who want to follow. Okay then, this was a great live stream. Thank you for joining, guys. So, but what are your opinions then about? Doesn't this explain the Hindu trad positions as well? And if yes, do you agree with these positions? Then would you agree and then declare yourself as a trad as well, or would you say that no, this is too much dogma? I'll wait for some comments whether you agree with these ideas or not. Oh, 2.5 घंटा हो गया. Fuck. I really need to sleep. Is Delhi having an earthquake right now? Why? I think this alone is not enough to convince me, but it definitely makes me lean in that direction. Hmm. Yeah. One article should not convince you. I don't have an opinion. Too much load for today. Yeah. Sleep on it, ponder over it, contemplate on it, and then come to a conclusion. Then yes. Won't trad, raita, etc. subdivision weaken Hindutva? Yes. That's why I say Hindu unity is never going to happen unless we lose some essential Hindu qualities. But see, the reason why I am also delving into tantra from a scholarly perspective purely, even though I'll never become a tantric upasak or sadhak myself, because I will never kill an animal unless my life depends on it somewhere in a very direct physical way. But I think tantra can be a new way to unite a lot of people, because it is a lot more lax on casteism issues, birth-based casteism issues, and also it's a more cool, fun and fascinating thing that no one really has any fucking clue about. So it's a new thing that will unite even the religious people from religious backgrounds who don't know anything about tantra, and also the atheist liberal commies, former atheist liberal commies who are now right-wingers. They also are interested in that. Are ye kya cheez hai? Everyone is going to gather around this thing like madhumakkis. So purely from a scholarly perspective, I am talking about tantra, and this can be an uniting principle. And as for Pashubali, I wouldn't do it personally myself, and so therefore I won't call myself a tantra sadhak and then be against Pashubali. So I'll just say that I'm knowing about tantra. That's the beginning and end of it. And if anyone wants to do it, it's impossible to be practical about it and oppose it, because meat eating is only increasing every day. So just because I'm against animal killing, no one gives a fuck in the entire country. So and in an ideal world, in an ideal vegetarian India, Pashubali would be the least of the problems, because so many animals are not going to get killed. So वो एक दो दिन कोई तिथि में अगर कुछ और या इवन इफ इन बहुत सारे मंदिरों में किसी को मारना भी पड़े, and that's the price we pay for that is a social cohesion, then also chalo kya kare. But I would hope that people find a way out of it. Like yesterday we were discussing something called satvika sadhana as well, where mamsa has a different definition altogether, matsya has a different definition altogether. So there are those leeways anyway. But Hindutva will need a dash of Abrahamism in some way or the other, and I think that's happening already. But of course there are many detractors to it also. But that dash of Abrahamism might come from Tantra. And also the other thing I like about Tantra is it's not that cool, spiritual, nice Hindu idea as well. Okay. See the difference between how the difference between how Rajarshi Nandy speaks and many others speak, that Hinduism is about peace, non-violence, so many good, the world is so beautiful. Those kinds of things versus how Rajarshi Nandy talks. That's a different ethos in itself, and that's very important for Hindutva. Narendra Somawat is saying, if self is centered, there's chaos and tyranny. If God is centered, there's order and harmony. Ashish, the type of trads I respect, but some extreme people I still don't fully understand. Yes, we will never fully understand each other totally. Do you identify yourself as trad? No, I'm against birth-based casteism. And see, even when you say you are against birth-based casteism, that sentence is also very loaded. What exactly it means, or what exactly does Kushal Mehra mean when he says that he wants Jati Varna to cease to exist? What is that sentence supposed to mean is a very vague sentence, vague point anyway, because first of all, Brahmins are just 4.3% in the entire country. They are not a relevant authority numerically in any way. But if we take religious institutions and religious spiritual leaders, authorities, figures seriously, as opposed to modern those cool gurus like Sadhguru, etc. If we don't take them into account and take only the traditional sampradayas into account, then the Brahmins again have some serious voice. And also, what's the main problem with birth-based casteism? That you are not letting Shudras, etc., pursue Vedas and all, right? Now, I am completely against reservation first and foremost. And which Shudra is really going around studying Sanskrit and pursuing that I really want to be a Purohit? So that's a very irrelevant discussion to be had anyway. But in theory, yes, I am against birth-based casteism in the sense that if someone is from a Brahmin family and they don't know any Sanskrit or any Vedas, and then they say that you don't have the authority to do this, or in any way I am lower than them, then I will say fuck off, etc. But other than that, what's there to even follow or not follow birth-based casteism today? So in that sense, I'm not really trad, because I'm saying if at all there is something to still pursue birth-based casteism today, if there is today, or if that again happens someday, I would be against it, and therefore I'm not a trad. And I'm of course against Pashubali as well. So if being against Pashubali makes me not Hindu, I'd be happily not Hindu as well. But I don't think that is the case, because there are many Satvika sampradayas and pathways anyway. I do like the point you made that we can't reject Shastras and rituals. We really have to ponder on that well. Yeah. Tantra has got bad name, Jadoo and all that, yes. What do you think of BJP prospects in Bengal in 2024 Lok Sabha? Namaste from Tamil Nadu. Here it seems DMK will sweep. Yeah, Trinamool will also sweep. I guess 20-23 seats, something like that. What about human sacrifice? Where did that question go? What about human sacrifice? People point out that civilizations like Aztecs were barbarians just because of that one thing. I think if we someday become an officially quote-unquote Hindu Rashtra, if there is some distinct thing called Hindu Rashtra as opposed to what we have now, then we could replace death penalty with Phasi ka Phanda. We could replace that with human sacrifice. That much I'm in favor of. मरना ही है तो भाई तो कोई एक अच्छे रिचुअल में मरो. And religious burials or chita vita has to absolutely go away. If you have committed a crime, if you're a convicted criminal, if you're getting killed because of your crime, you don't deserve a respectful burial or death. And we could solve a lot of terrorism with that as well, because terrorism has no religion. Twisting Mamsa into speech control really got my nerves. Like, just call it Vaksamyam. Some people say that if we allow Pashubali, we will end up doing human sacrifice someday. Do you think it is a reasonable fear? Yeah, but कौन राजी होगा human sacrifice के लिए? पहले भी human sacrifice जब होता था, that was only done with not convicts, I mean, वो dacoits, etc. Okay, who used to get caught. So do human sacrifice of convicted criminals who are going to get hanged anyway. Maybe people do want to offer they eat to the gods, as they will accept anything given out of love, like eating mamsa as prasad is not pap. Hinduism can only be united if we believe in one ultimate reality like Brahma. The polytheistic or pluralistic answer will always divide us. Yes. Why Supreme Court denied gay civil unions as well? What does that mean actually? I don't know. I have not read about that. Point of union is to procreate. Gay people cannot procreate. Oh, acha. That's a weak argument. Civil union. Point of marriage is to procreate. Point of union is not procreate. That is a wrong argument basically from the Supreme Court. I was opposing gay marriage. Gay civil union क्या live together भी ban कर दिया क्या? What is the difference they are differentiating between civil union and marriage? I have not read about it. It is not Supreme Court's argument, it's mine. Oh, achha. Then what was the justification given by Supreme Court? Because Ninar's argument is applicable for marriages, not for civil unions. If Hindus forsake polytheism for the sake of unity is reforming Hinduism, yeah, I'm not for that. I'm saying that whatever Hindu unity we have now, if it is increased to some degree, that is also enough. But of course, self-defense laws have to be liberated. Strong law and order. Stop giving quotas for police servicemen. So many SC/ST quotas, sportsman quotas. बाप कोई पहचान वाला था कोटा, नेता को वो नेता का बेटा है कोटा, पुलिस वाले को पहचानता है कोटा. सो मेनी कोटाज हैव टू गो अवे. अदरवाइज इससे ज़्यादा यूनिटी का ज़रूरत है भी नहीं फॉर सेफ्टी एंड ऑल. Some people say Supreme Court was in pressure of Abrahamic religious institutions and rejected. That might be the case. They have been very much against gay marriage, etc. Especially Christians. Okay then, good night guys. Thanks for joining. We had a great, fruitful discussion today. Think over all the things we discussed today. It's not clear, they just passed it. Oh, acha. Oh, okay. I say polytheistic monoism is sense that Shiva is Krishna, that is all forms of Bhagwan are equal. Yeah. Good night guys.